Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Over Your New Reader. We have a stacked house today. It's bumping, as I say, which is a very goofy, silly thing to say. But it's bumping here on Over Your New I regret it entirely.
Own it.
It's bumping. Anyways, we have a lot of guests here in honor of Omar's birthday month. Yes, birthday month, when I posted about it.
Was that for the people in the back? What was it?
Your birthday month.
I believe this has now been called Omarch, if you will.
Omarch?
No.
Yes, it has been renamed.
No.
Oh no!
Yes,
I love that.
You love that?
Don't encourage
That's
him.
3 votes.
Yeah.
That's 3 votes for yes.
Listen, I'm also born in March, and I'm down for the rebrand.
You're down. Yep.
Oh,
So it's 2
Ophel,
birthdays.
when's your birthday?
The 25th.
Oh, wow. So we
Happy early birthday.
Happy early birthday. Glad I wasn't late.
You can have the last 5 days. I
Yeah.
will allow that. I'll make it so.
I'm so sorry.
The last 5 days are no longer. We'll call it.
Just- We'll make something up. We'll make something just as classy as this.
Yeah.
This is my buddy
Well,
Max
March
that
is
made it up, by the
fantastic.
way. Thank you, Heath. Let's make that happen. Maddie, you want to introduce everybody?
Technically, this is my first time meeting Ophel, but I followed you on Instagram. So, Ophel, so she's been on the channel before, and she's a really cool cosplayer, and is a great Aerith Gainsborough cosplay from Final Fantasy VII. And as a cosplayer and cosplay photographer, I definitely noticed that you have great photos. Anyways, hi. Welcome to Over Your New Reader for the first time.
I'm excited. This will be really fun. I took notes.
I did too. They're very funny, though. I don't know how good they are.
Are
and
these
of
notes
course-
about people's costumes and makeup?
Maybe.
I know
There are. I've circled some of these costumes are my quintessential faves, so I did take some notes, but most of them are
Okay.
just kind of out of pocket things that I hope I remember what I was referencing later.
Yeah, I did write. Why did the X Factor have such ugly blue jumpsuits? But we'll
Yes.
get there.
I wrote,
of course-
these suits.
Yes, ugly as hell.
Regular humans would wear ugly jumpsuits. They're trying to
Right, it
fit.
was flat scan fashion.
Yeah, exactly.
Flat scans. Dude, that's a hate word.
And we have Peter here, aka Crushing Crisis, aka the person I followed for like a million years. So happy. to
I
have
can't
you.
believe I'm finally here.
I know.
on
Not
Over Your New
officially.
Reader.
Officially,
Not
your
officially.
first time is in 2 weeks.
This
So-
is like when Wolverine's only on the last page of Hulk 180.
Yeah.
Like it's officially my first appearance as an
Is that how
affiliate.
you see yourself? Really?
Yeah, Bob.
And we
Okay.
have the amazing Amanda, the wonderful, the quintessential, just got a new nose ring, Amanda. And Omar. Just kidding. I love you. Happy birthday, Omar.
Oh, thank you. There it is. Okay. Yes. You have us back today to talk about one of my favorite crossover events, one of my favorite mutant stories, and the very first X-Men crossover, if you will. There were other little mini-series before this that kind of crossed over into each other. There was annuals that crossed into each other, but this is like the big time, like the first time that editors were like, hey, X-Men selling really well. Let's introduce people to X Factor. And there's this other book called Power Pack that Louise Simonson is writing. Let's just shoehorn those kids in here. So really quick, I'm going to give you a quick little, synopsis of what's happened previously. After the death of Jean Grey in the pages of the Dark Phoenix Saga, Scott was sad. And he was sad for about 50 so issues. So much so that he ended up marrying somebody that looked like Jean Grey, Madeline Pryor.
That's so unlike him.
Yes.
I mean, like dead on like her. He has the things for redheads. So he married her. They had a child, Nathan Christopher Summers, and people started questioning his leadership ability with the X-Men. He was like, "I'm fine, I can do this." Storm, in the meantime, had lost her powers because of Forge's love, and you can find out by reading all those amazing stories. And she has no powers, but she's also not just leading the X-Men. She fought Kalisto for the leadership of the Morlocks and won without her powers. Now, in issue 201 of X-Men is when Cyclops is like, "I'm the leader," and Storm's like, "Bitch, please." And they fought. Without power, Storm was able to defeat Cyclops and take leadership of the X-Men. Now, one can say, oh, but Cyclops was worried about his wife and kid. Or Cyclops just wasn't all there. He didn't bring his A game. Doesn't matter. She won. Cyclops left. The X-Men were now Storms because Professor X also left. In issue 200, Professor X is like, oh, man, this Lilandra chick, she's really cute. and I got a thing for feathers, so I'm gonna go to space with them. And she took off with Professor X, and he left Magneto in charge. He's like, Magnus, I respect everything you did. You messed up a couple times. Sure, you killed a lot of people in a submarine, but we'll let that slide if you take over and become the headmaster of the school where the New Mutants were still learning. No one saw this conversation happen, by the way. So they are just to believe the word of Magneto that, hey, Professor X left me in charge. He's gone. I'm your new leader. And everybody was like, didn't believe him at first. And you can probably tell in the pages here, this has still been about a year after that, that they're still having a little bit of a, should we trust them? Should we not? So Cyclops decides that he's just going to live a happily married life with Madeline Pryor and his newborn kid. Then he gets a phone call. They found a cocoon deep in the seas. You're never going to believe this, Scott.
This man ain't never been loyal a day.
And he's like, what? And they're like, inside the cocoon is Jean Grey. And he's like, Maddie, I got to go. Like,
doesn't he leave and the phone is still dangling in the kitchen
the
off
phone
the wall?
is dangling. Like if he was living in modern time, Maddie might have found out through an Instagram post or like a text message. Jean's back.
Yes.
So
LOL, my girlfriend's back.
this is when it gets kind of crazy because then Cyclops is reunited with Iceman and Beast and Angel and Jean Grey. She is back. And that is all found in the pages of the Fantastic Four issues, and then, of course, the Avengers, and then the first issue of X Factor. So they decide to get together again and become a team called X Factor, where they're pretending to be mutant hunters called X Factor, and then they're pretending, or I'm sorry, they take on the name of the Exterminators to become like a team of superheroes that go and help mutants out. But that's the whole thing, right? Like they're pretending to be mutant hunters, but really what they're doing is helping mutants learn how to use their powers.
Real quick,
Convoluted thing to do.
Super
Thank you,
Mr. Text said he did it for love.
Yes, we can all say that. But I think, Peter, did I miss anything crucial, important to this that they need to know, people?
I guess the only other thing is who Freedom Force is and like why does Mystique seem to be working for the government? Because it's only a plot at the beginning, but it's very disorienting if you're coming into this cold.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, why don't you go ahead and talk about that, and I can mention what happened previously to Phoenix. I forgot to mention about Rachel.
I was about to say, I just remembered Rachel existed.
Nobody forgets about Rachel. You explain Freedom
What's
Force.
funny is the beginning of the story is them all talking about Rachel, and you never see her on panel. And you're like,
No.
did that really happen? Was there another teammate? Because it's all after she's just left.
Yeah, it's kind of sad, actually, the way that her story ended. But Peter, who's Freedom Force? Why do we need them?
So Freedom Force, gosh, I forget all of the exactitudes of it, but in the 170s and 180s, Val Cooper strikes a deal to have mutants that are officially working for the government, and Mystique like wedges her way in there with Destiny and a bunch of people who were formerly part of her brotherhood of evil mutants, including Blob and Avalanche, and then they acquire some more as time goes on, and also Spider-Woman from Secret Wars just because. And so they are like the government.
Confused by that. Anyway,
yeah,
sorry.
not a mutant.
Not a mutant.
And so they are kind of officially sanctioned, but they're using their official sanction to pretty much be villains. And I think back channel, if I'm not mistaken, Mystique is kind of collaborating with Spiral, and Spiral is sort of kind of a member, but like not officially a member. I think
who else
where
was a
we
member
are
during that time, though? Who else was a really important member that I'm sure people, if they went to go see the multi-billion-dollar award-winning Madam Web, Spider-Woman's in this. That's right. Spider-Woman is part of the Freedom Force during this time. This really weird time of Freedom Force. So yes, Rachel was a member of the X-Men. They got into a fight with the Hellfire Club. She went really far, according to Wolverine. You can see at the beginning here where he's talking about her, where so much so that he had to stab her, and she left. And we don't see Rachel for a long time. There was supposed to be a miniseries that had her, but then eventually that didn't get made, and we got Excalibur instead. But that doesn't happen until after the fall of the mutants. And now everyone is sort of caught up with previously on X-Men. Should have done that with Cyclops' voice, but didn't happen. Not yet. Not enough. Not enough wine. All right. Mutant Massacre. I talked enough. Who's never read it? I know you two haven't. Surprise, you haven't either. Okay, excellent.
Well, I'll rephrase. I've read X Factor. Excuse me. I've read X Factor all the way through, but I am not that far into Uncanny X-Men. So that was my first time reading like half of the issues.
Okay, this is interesting.
Oh,
Who wants to give the synopsis of the beginning of the Mutant Massacre?
Lord, it's a whole mess. So
Okay.
this is going to be a little hard because right now you enter a world where, of course, humans are aware of mutants and they hate them. Very typical. But now you have several different groups acting in play. You have former X-Men pretending to be humans wearing very ugly blue jumpsuits, saying that they're X-Factor. We are just humans that don't look like anybody else anybody's ever seen. Of course, even though we look exactly as we do as normal, very identifiable. Humans that are hunting mutants, but not really. Their whole purpose is to find these mutants who have uncontrollable powers, but then help them. So not that different than they did before. And then, of course, you still have Xavier's school, but right now it is headed up by Magneto. And at the same time, so you have all this like different pieces going on while you have a lot happening. So at the beginning, I guess, it's all over the place. You're going to have to tap in eventually. But we start off more so with Dazzler, but she's not Dazzler right now because she's hiding that. So she's not even like the lead of her band. She's just playing in the band. But she is... We see her at the beginning and then getting taken over by, looks like Malice from the Marauders. I took notes this time because I had to.
But even before that, we're introduced to Tommy and her boyfriend, who's part of the Hellfire Club, and they're being attacked by some unknown entities. Tommy escapes, even though Richard was like, "No, we're better if we stay together," but she still left. And only to come to find out that she also doesn't make it. And they are being hunted by these people known as the Marauders. And Malice was sent like on a side mission to get Dazzler, I guess, is what? Yeah.
And then the Marauders are mutants that are actually trying to kill other mutants.
Because they're the best mutants? I'm really not quite sure.
I don't know. We're like one of 5 different mutant groups that are happening here.
Claremont at that time, I don't know, was 100% sure on why the Marauders were killing them. And this is, I mean, it was unique. At this time, we hadn't really seen... We'd seen a lot of mutant hate crime, and we'd had God Loves, Man Kills. There's the guys who like beat up Professor Xavier in the alleyway in the 190s of Uncanny X-Men. There's plenty of discrimination, but we've never really seen somebody out there like killing mutants, full stop. So this was like the whole idea of it being Mutant Massacre, and that's the scene that it opens with in that first issue, was pretty impactful at the time because this was new. Now we're so used to it in X-Men. We're like, oh, more hate crimes against mutants, but that was not how it was at this time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, retroactively too, it was really interesting because so I wanted to read Inferno. So when I looked up like a basic reading list, they were like, read X Factor first. So I haven't read Uncanny this far. But knowing that this is how the Marauders are like introduced and what ends up coming of it into later things like Inferno is wild to me. Because I'm like, they really don't tell you much from the get. They're like, these people just want to kill mutants. Are they mutants? We don't know for the first couple issues. They're just murdering mutants. And they don't even mention Sinister for like several issues.
Well, that's the really cool thing and the payoff about being like an X-Men reader. It's like they played Claremont was playing the long game. So he may not have known what Sinister looked like. I mean, you get a little glimpse when Psylocke is looking inside of, that's one of my favorite parts, which we'll get there here in a minute. But he had no idea, and then later on, of course, Inferno ties everything in, including Madeline Pryor, but I won't say much more of that until we actually get to Inferno in one of these old reader, new readers, because this is a lot of fun. The beauty of like reading X-Men in chronological order is that you get to experience all of this, all the emotions and the payoffs, like coming into the story without knowing these characters like the Morlocks. Not that they're beloved, but you do still feel some kind of empathy for them, right? They're not the best looking characters.
That's why they're easy to love, though.
They're too ugly to join the X-Men because let's face it, you kind of have to be hot.
I don't care about any of these other people.
Don't they all kind of look like Muppets?
Yes.
Yes, that's a very good description, Peter.
Hey, wait. Speaking
I
of
would die
Muppets,
for Arty and Leech. Like they're so cute.
Arty and Leech is the
Oh
one
my goodness.
that
Jump
is
scare.
the stuff of nightmare.
That was not expected. That was
Baby, please don't save it. Save it for later, please.
James wanted me to get you that goat one. He didn't want. He brought up the goat T-shirt, which is like greatest of Alf time. It's a picture of Alf.
That's so
That
stupid.
John Cena wears in his new movie, and I was like, I want to buy that for Omar, but I think I should get him something that actually he would want.
Yeah,
not
give it to
that.
somebody that actually cares about that.
I wanted to show it earlier, but I didn't want to interrupt you. So right over here, because you said Muppet.
You summoned the stupid thing. Thank you, baby. So yes, you do hear Sinister's name, but you don't know why he sent them out to kill mutants, other than a little tidbit here and there of like, oh, you're not part of the plan. You're not part of this master plan. And of course, that's mainly in the issues of X-Men. In X Factor, you're dealing with like, oh, I love Jean, but she likes Cyclops. But Cyclops is married.
no, poor Warren.
And Cyclops is like, she'll never look at me the same way. I have a wife and kid.
Ugh.
But maybe
So
she's
tired
into
of that.
that. So it's really interesting how the stories are different, you know, when you got the X-Men. But go ahead. Where were we with
I actually want to ask our new readers something that's kind of part of the setup.
Yeah.
I often think of everything from X-Men, Uncanny X-Men 201 all the way to 281 as this sort of very lengthy X-Men disassembled period, because very few times is there a fully coherent, fully happy team. It only happens in little bursts. So at the beginning of this, did you come in expecting that you were going to see this very kind of like X-Men team pummeling people? Because they're very kind of on the outs with each other, even at the start of this book. What did you think about that?
So I did. Honestly, I thought our X-Men would be the X-Men I'm used to. So when I come to find out you have the X-Men that I'm familiar with, that I'm very familiar with, like Wolverine, and you know, there's the X-Men with Storm, Wolverine, and then they have brought Psylocke in. And she's kind of like a newcomer, but then they're not working with Jean Grey, and they're not working with Cyclops and Angel. So it was interesting to see them all kind of working separately, but then this event has to bring them all together. And I don't know if that was the point of the event itself, but I'm sure it's one of the points, because they were all on the outs and they all had to come together to save whatever Morlocks were left over that they could save after the massacre, and find Arty, who's hiding somewhere in these tunnels because they were having trouble finding
do you
him.
two remember Arty and Leech from the Fantastic Four? Jonathan Hickman used them in the
I
Future
do remember them,
Foundation.
yeah. Mm-hmm. I was like, they look so familiar. And then when I realized that Franklin was in the Power Pack, and I was like, oh, okay, now.
Oh, good,
Well,
because
I
they
played
kept calling him
Marvel
Frank.
Snatch, but I'm used to seeing
Yes.
Leech.
I wasn't
So
used to
wait.
them calling him by his man name, Frank. I'm so used to like Franklin, like or Frankie, like
Yeah.
for kids.
Wait, that
And they're like,
took me
"Frank."
so long. 'Cause I never picked
Oh,
the
it wasn't
Power
until the end where he was like, and you know, my parents, the Fantastic Four.
They're like, oh, I hope your parents come and get you soon. And I'm like, oh, that kid's like on his own. And then he like mentions the FF. And I'm like, wait. And I went back and I'm like, his name is Frank. What's happening?
Yes, because they kept calling him Frank, and I was like,
Yes.
oh man, somebody's gonna be
Like,
so
it has to
confused.
be him. There's no other, like, how would they introduce another Frank? That's not the
Yeah.
punishment.
For me coming in, I was not surprised, but I think that's only because I haven't read a lot of like older X-Men except for like certain events that are like very key in like Marvel history. Is kind of how we've always approached it. I haven't actually like sat down and like really read through X-Men, except for just random bits of X-Men, modern X-Men the past like 10 years. We're just kind of like dipping randomly in different authors. And a lot of those are not together. So for me, I'm like, oh, of course, naturally they're not together. Of course, Scott is not, he's somewhere else, or of course, so-and-so is somewhere else.
Yeah.
So for me, I'm like, okay, this makes sense. But luckily I had people like kind of like grab onto. Like the minute Ileana showed up, I was like, okay, I'm good. My girl is here. Everything is fine. That's all thanks to Midnight Suns. But
the game.
Yeah, no, it does help that each individual group has like a certain character that I know that I can gravitate. Well, I mean, obviously New Mutants has like Sunspot and they have all these characters you get familiar with. I didn't expect so many. I had to write them down. Okay, what are all the different X groups here?
Oh, I can't wait to talk about this.
There's so many. And why are they both the X Factor and the Exterminators?
Well, X Factor is when they're hunting mutants, so the media can be like, "Oh, they're on our side." Exterminators like, "Shh, we're really the Exterminators. We're here to help."
Like anyway, it's like a Sailor Moon effect. Like we know.
Yeah, right. Like Cyclops can never take it off.
Yeah, exactly. The mask is
not a good name.
Who is she?
My favorite is that they had been playing it like nobody knew for the first few issues of X Factor, but then I think Magneto sees them as he's going into the Hellfire
Club.
Yes,
that's one of my favorites.
It was just I love that moment where he's like, clearly that's Cyclops.
And they're like, it's Magneto.
Guys, is the same.
Magneto's bad guy the whole time.
Yeah, I love that Angel's carrying his wings in his backpack because that's gonna hide it from plain sight. This I can't express how much I love this issue. This was issue 211, and I think I've read this so many times as a kid because I thought, man, what a way to introduce your bad guys.
Are these
the Marauders.
New? Is this like the origin of them or no? Because
this is the first appearance of the Marauders.
Okay.
You know, previously they came in and they killed Tommy and her boyfriend, who was a member of the Hellfire Club, right?
Yeah.
But the whole idea was to go and let Tommy live so they can go and find the tunnels. This is why I hate the Trial of Gambit, and I'm not going to spoil why. But that is one of the worst retcons in the history of X-Men. This is them like just coming in, and you know the Morlocks are these people that can turn milk into cheese. They don't have the greatest powers, right? They're not like Optic Blast. Most of them are just ugly dudes or gals that powers doesn't amount to anything, unfortunately.
So, question: Morlocks.
Yes.
Is this the same? Again, my limited X-Men knowledge. They brought the Morlocks back in X-Men Evolution, right? Is that not who?
Yes, that is the same. That's based
the same.
On this.
Okay, because when I saw that, I was like, "Is this the same?"
Yeah, same characters, and you know, I mean, back then, comic book writers were big fans of novels, right? Like that's why we have Sauron. That's why we have the Morlocks. That's why we have Caliban. And you're going to see a lot of names like that. Both Claremont, Roy Thomas, all those guys were big fans of actual novels. So that's what they named the people in the subterranean tunnels, which of course makes sense, right? The way the Morlocks lived in the Time Machine book. But this is when they first show up, and then they start slaughtering the Marauders, or I'm sorry, the Morlocks.
Yeah.
And Storm, being the leader of the Morlocks, was like, hey, those are my people. We need to go and stop them. And the X-Men are, at this point, you know, they just got out of this huge battle. They're still kind of healing.
Yeah, Nightcrawler.
Now they got to deal with something else that they're like, all right, let's see what this is about. And they walk into a slaughter. And I love, like, this is also one of my favorite things about this time of X-Men is when you get to see everything through the eyes of Kitty, right? Like, Kitty shows that innocence and the beauty of also being an X-Men with the horrific things that you can see. And she's like talking about a slaughterhouse, and man, the smell, it's just, I don't know. I just really, really enjoyed this issue for as horrible as it is, because you do see the death of kids in here. You see the death of just innocent people that did nothing. And this shit happens in real life. Yeah. And it just, I don't know. Yeah. Comics, you know, they're just a reflection of what's going on, and
they couldn't show the actual like physical like killing, right? They had to like
no, they were still restricted by the comics code.
Yeah, the comics code was still there, so that's why you see so much of the description of what's happening around them, because they can't show it.
That's why you see.
Although to this day, I find it very shocking still. Like even some of the shots of the bodies just on the ground, or the descriptions on. You forget sometimes, because of the comics code and because of how old these books are, that they could be really heavy. This is, and in some ways, this is a lot heavier than some comics would go today, even though some of the topic matter would push the boundaries more today. But this arc always really makes me appreciate that Claremont had only done a couple of Morlock stories by this point. There was like the Caliban kidnaps Kitty, then there was Storm fighting Kalisto. Maybe we're like 3 Morlock stories deep. people who've known X-Men forever kind of assume that all of these plot elements have existed forever and will exist forever. But Claremont had just put in a little bit of work to this idea of stratifying mutant society to say, even within mutants, there's the haves and have-nots. And really to crystallize that with Storm and Kalisto, which you see repeatedly in this. And then also later when Kalisto is egging on Dazzler about like, you're one of the pretty ones, you know, like we don't have that status in society. And so we're hated even and feared even more than you're hated and feared, which is like a really deep plot and really reflects in a lot of ways that minority groups are treated in the real worlds, where there's the accepted or the passing members of that minority that the majority will accept and those that will not. And it's really interesting to see that collide with this Marauders plot here. I think it's if it was too subtle for you to notice until here as a reader, then you got here and you were like, oh, okay, now I see what Claremont has been doing for the last 40 issues. With
it's easy to feel for them because you get the group that like have to be underground because they don't want to get into conflict because they don't have a place. And then you see the ones that like, well, I guess I'll join the bad guys, because my heart always goes out to the Blob because I hate it for him. So I'm like, well, what are your options?
Yeah, he's
that guy.
And
yes,
they weigh it so interesting too, because I think that, and this is why I love X Factor so much, is it really has a conversation about like where privilege falls in with this, because like the X-Men, the OG5 are mad because they're like, why can't they get why we're doing this X Factor thing and why we're doing this? Like we passed up trying to help you. Why are you mad at us? And it's like, because from an outside, that's not what it looks like at all. And even though you're like justifying it well, and you can do like, there's so many mutants. They even show it in a scene with Nightcrawler where Kitty and Peter go to save him, that like some mutants just cannot under any circumstances live a life of peace. And it's a very interesting monologue that at least the X Factor portion of this talks about in detail.
That is another payoff too, that unfortunately, if you're just reading stories, right, you're not going to see. But the evolution of the relationship between Kitty Pryde, you know, who comes from a Jewish background, and Nightcrawler, who she sees as a demon, who she sees of all the opposite, like a representation of everything else, of everything that she believes, right? Like against everything she believes. And now they're just so close that when he gets hurt, they're like, we got to do something. I think that's beautiful. That's why that's why a lot of us love Claremont's X-Men. Yeah. Happy birthday month, Omar. # Phoenix Omnibus forever. Yeah. Thank you. Never forget that.
And I think the Marauders are really terrifying in that same aspect. You were talking about how their powers are kind of useless on their own. But the thing is, like, their hatred together is powerful, and their powers together are powerful. Like, each one could not have done that. But the ability to use the spear, which disarms them, and then Vertigo mixing with Riptide and stuff, like, their hate and their synergy is what made that possible. And there's just really cool, like, dialogues happening with the Mutant Massacre, I feel like.
Oh yeah, well, even like just because we get to a point where Colossus' own like anger it's out of control, because like when he kills Riptide, I'm like, whoa,
right.
Oh yeah, I want to talk about that.
We need to talk about that, because that is top 10 favorite moments of X-Men for me. Because Peter, are you frozen, or you just look that good that you?
He's just looking at you.
Okay. I'm gonna highlight it just because I'm glad you brought it up. Yeah. This is one of my favorite moments in X-Men, because before this, yes, Peter was innocent, right? Like, he came from a farm. He didn't want to be a warrior. He was a young guy, but then he got to experience what real life is like. So, against his will, in a previous story, in the Proteus storyline, he killed Proteus on accident because he didn't know what he was doing. And then, of course, he's not that innocent, though, because he did. Oh, damn it, Peter. Are you frozen?
No, he can hear you.
Okay. Right before this, about issues 190 to 200, there was this whole event called the Secret Wars, where the X-Men were taken to another world. And he thought it was okay to cheat on Kitty because that lady that he was with was in a different area code. In a completely different area code. Oh, my God. And that scene where he tells her about this girl, that lives in my brain forever. Especially the way Wolverine and Nightcrawler deal with him. They're like, we're going to take him out drinking and get his ass kicked because he needs it. But before that, he was like the symbol of innocence, like for the X-Men. And I thought this scene right here was just so powerful, where he sees his friends just get slaughtered left and right, and he cracks his neck. But the best part comes, it's a line from Rogue that says, oh, right up there. But, she's talking about, he's nothing like, Wolverine and I. Peter was made for gentler things. That is beautiful poetry. I love that line so much, because that's the way Rogue sees him, right? Like, this is like the death of innocence. We were on a break.
And it's
Peter was young.
This page always stands out to me, even in this kind of paging through to reread and freshen up for this, for that exact panel, that you really realize that each of the X-Men kind of sees even though they're a family, it's like a real family, right? If you're the youngest child, everybody always looks at you as the youngest, even when you're a college graduate and you're, fending for yourself out in the world. And each one of them kind of sees the other ones in this stratification, right, of innocence. Whereas Logan at the beginning is like, Rogue, don't get involved in all this, when she's with him in Japan. And then later we see Rogue here being like, Colossus isn't a killer like me. And Colossus and Kitty are also often held together as the innocent ones and the young ones. And here we see Colossus breaking his innocence to defend Kitty, who they all see as the most innocent of them all. So it's just really interesting how it represents a real life family dynamic where some people can't see the growth of other people, and how similar they actually really are. And that Rogue panel just always really drives it home for me.
Yeah, that's this issue, that page, those couple pages, just it, as a kid, just I loved it. Like, all these things that are happening in the X-Men, shit just got real.
Well, it makes sense for narratively, it makes sense for one of them to break amidst all of this, because it's all over the place. Every group is fighting another group, and then you have one-off people here that we'll get to, like Sabertooth. You always like one-off people fighting each other. It makes sense that naturally one of them has to break in that.
Yeah.
Especially when you have Kitty, who, bless her heart. No, we're going Southern. Who cares? Whatever. Can't unfazed. She's going through all this stuff, right?
Yeah,
There's other things happening.
Left and right, the X-Men are dropping, right?
Yeah.
Nightcrawler is hurt. He's put in a comatose state. Like, Colossus has to be taken back to the X-Men. Yeah. Kitty can't face back because that harpoon hit her in the right spot when she was trying to save her friend that I was talking about earlier that looked like a demon. And then while they're heading back, the Marauders are just having a heyday, slaughtering the rest of the Morlocks.
Yeah.
Oh, and in the pages of X, right? They were just sitting down, like having tea time. And then in comes the Marauders. Awful, not fair. Which I found myself saying a lot when I was a kid. This is so unfair. These people are not equipped to fight these gun-toting, harpoon-carrying. And this is interesting because Wolverine and Sabertooth have never fought in the comics before this.
Wait, what?
This is the first time Wolverine and Sabertooth have fought in comics. And it's crazy to read it, right? Because Sabertooth is a character that first appeared in the pages of Iron Fist, number 15. Really cool creation by Chris Claremont and John Byrne. And Claremont was like, hey, I want to use this guy again. Maybe I'll put him in a story somewhere. Kind of like the way that Vertigo was used, right? Vertigo comes from what was she, a mutate, I think, from the Savage Land in those Marvel fanfare issues, and somebody decided, hey, let's use her in the Marauders. So those two characters have appeared before. Everybody else is new. But Wolverine and Sabertooth have never fought. They talk about it in here. And it's just, that just goes to show you how wonderful it's written, that you're like, holy shit, did I miss something? Like, when did that happen? Even as a guy that collected X-Men, the guy to everything was like, I need to find that issue where they fought. And then Claremont later on did a little retcon. You remember this, Pete, with the classic X-Men, where he did a little flashback to a story where Wolverine is just standing on top of a rooftop. I think it was on his birthday, and Sabertooth grabs him from behind and rips his throat out or something. But they've had this connection, right? Like, from just reading the dialogue and the narration boxes, that they've known each other for a long time.
Yeah, I want to hear more of the new reader reaction to this. I was just looking at my Sabertooth guide, and Sabertooth had only made 5 appearances. He was a Power Man and Iron Fist villain, and he was a Spider-Man villain at this point per 5 issues.
Wow.
That's all that he was.
So the way they build it up, I thought this was like they fought before, and this is some type of they're coming back together, they'll fight again, it's going to be this epic battle. That's how when I read it, that's what I envisioned it. And that could be just because of other media I've consumed before this that's outside of the comic realm that I would assume that's what this all is, not realizing that in the past there was no connection between the two of them.
Yeah, I know. I think that was forever, like that's a forever thing. Growing up, besides just reading random X-Men runs and then main events, it's all from like animated series and Evolution in the movies and things like that. And so in my mind, like, of course, it's just that. Yes, you don't have this person without this person. Like that's sort of like in that one issue where Psylocke's trying to get in Sabertooth's mind, and there's the description of how different, while his claws are man-made and his are natural, but still it doesn't matter. It just feels like it was always going to happen, and it was supposed to happen. And the fact that it was just kind of like, oh, we'll just throw them. That's a good idea. Let's make them fight.
Oh, Alan just finished reading this event for the first time too. Such a great read, Wolverine versus Sabertooth. Yes, Logan, this was a hint. I mean, you can even tell here they were laying the foundation for this. Yeah, it went on for years. Like, I remember being a kid and getting into arguments. No, it's not. There's no way. Larry Hama said, eventually that did get resolved later on.
I will say, Sabertooth, there was that interesting part where Sabertooth takes that woman.
Oh, in the Daredevil issue.
I was in the Daredevil issue.
I did not understand where that was going, and I was like, "Are they trying to make him?"
I can't. Okay, we have to talk about these.
Man, the minute she was like, "She does not know this man," and I was like, "You are not doing this to me, Claremont. This is not happening." Thank God it didn't. But I was like, "We are not doing this."
I was babbling from cover to cover. I was like, "Why is this in this event? What is happening?" This feels
I felt the same way. It was so out of place. I was like, "This."
My mate, our home. I was like, "No."
It's one of those like werewolf fanfics that keep going around like right now. This trending. I was like, "What? Where am I?" I was like,
it is a shifter romance plot that I did not want in my X-Men.
No,
this is like why is this here?
It's working out. I was like, "What is that?" He's like my mate, and I was like,
"Yes, let's talk about this," because I was so confused. Because then he goes back to being a really, really bad guy, right? So
of all of Mutant Massacre, you guys want to jump right to the poor Anticlimactic.
We're all over the
place. There's a lot here. We can jump around.
Okay, so let's get in here. Anticlimactic's run on Daredevil, I thought everybody loved until I joined the world of the internet, where I found out it was divisive, that people hate it, and then there were people that loved it. I love this run. I love her run on Daredevil. I thought it was phenomenal. And I always thought, okay, people hate it because it's not dark and broody like Frank Miller's run on Daredevil. It's the opposite. And yes, I will say this issue, though, gets really on the nose with that metaphor, like of everything, of cat and mouse and wildcats, and how you need to keep animals undomesticated.
Was he just like this already?
That's the guy.
Was he just like this animalistic, like, oh, there's an animal in me and I'm acting according to those animal impulses?
Well,
like, is that a new thing for this?
I don't know why. I don't know why she wrote him so zesty. I was like, I don't know what's happening.
Okay, maybe she got some notes, right? Like maybe she got some editor notes, because this was the big event, and I don't think she'd ever. Yeah, Peter, she never written.
He'd only been in 4 appearances, and actually, my note on his previous appearance of this in Power Man and Iron Fist 84 is Sabertooth mauls Misty Knight's roommate. This is an early example of the frequent theme of his unhinged violence and predation towards women. So it had already been established that they were going to use him that way.
I think the connection with Sabertooth that Innocenti had was she was the editor at the time, if I'm not mistaken. During that time, on like when Claremont was doing all this on X-Men, and then you had the Iron Fist stories. But this is like the one story that sticks out, and I feel like that's because it's not really by either Chris Claremont, who's already writing X-Men, and it's not by Louise Simonson, Wheezy, who's writing X-Factor. She'd been writing X-Factor, and then of course her husband came on board to write or draw X-Factor. Oh, I love those issues. But Walt was also writing Thor. This is the one issue that's written by somebody that's kind of outside of the circle. But Innocenti has... Hold on. She'd written Longshot before this. So she'd written some X-Men characters. I don't know. Maybe she got some Cliff Notes version on Sabertooth, like some notes, and was like,
those are weird Cliff Notes.
I feel like it, from the parts of Nocenti's Daredevil I've read, it fits in because I know, like, I love her Typhoid Mary. It's the quintessential Typhoid Mary. But I know, like, a lot of the plots deal with violence against women and situations like that in a really well done way. So for me, tonally, it fits with Daredevil and a lot of the narrative she was doing. It doesn't fit with Mutant Massacre, though. So I feel like if you were reading this in Daredevil, it would not feel as out of place as it does just in the middle of Mutant Massacre.
Yeah, that helps then, because it is hard when you're like different authors, different stories, like getting in the middle of it and trying to figure out what's the like central like storytelling mechanism.
Well, and it's also their first crossover. It's like, how do we deal with this?
Yeah.
Oh, you're giving me this character, and he's what? Chasing this Wolverine guy? Okay, sure, he can fight Daredevil. And I feel like that was the case here. Maybe. I don't know. I
also can't wait to talk about Power Pack. I'm like, how do they let these children come in and witness a murder?
Yes, poor children.
I will die on the hill that I love Power Pack.
And I love how
I'm interested in Power Pack, but do they regularly let these kids see dead bodies? Is this like a normal deal?
No,
I mean, we are superheroes. So I
was
guess
another game
these
changer.
tiny children that are like, don't put popcorn in my shorts. Oh, there's a dead body in front of me.
Literally.
Not just the dead body, but dead kids they knew.
These kids.
Like, they knew these people.
And Leech's
like,
mom. I mean,
it was, oh my God. Okay, let me tell you a little quick behind the scenes. I want to hear Peter's opinion on that Daredevil issue. A little quick behind the scenes is editors were like, we got too many mutants. We need to get rid of them. That's the whole reason behind the Mutant Massacre. It wasn't like
typical.
You know, we're getting to this point where we're building up to. They were just told, hey, we need to get rid of some mutants. There's way too many of them. So that's where the idea for the Mutant Massacre came from. Because every summer they have a summit where they talk about the stories that are coming up. And I'm sure that summer they were like, all right, let's kill a bunch of ugly mutants and ugly kids. That's what we're going to do. We're going to get rid of those guys. Nobody important is going to die. Until you get to the X Factor issues. Somebody did. Like, which was great. I love that. Oh, man, that story arc is beautiful. What did you think about the Daredevil issue, Peter?
I never loved that Daredevil issue, and I think Othell really hit the nail on the head that it doesn't feel like it's of a piece with the rest of Mutant Massacre, and it doesn't, even Sabertooth's participation in Mutant Massacre doesn't really track perfectly with that issue. And so I often but again, I just think it's interesting that Nocenti plays that beat with him, because I was just looking up that Power Man and Iron Fist issue that I was reading, and that was written by Mary Jo Duffy. So actually a lot of women had written Sabertooth in his early journey to be this unhinged character. Yeah.
Oh, he's a horrible like character later on. I mean, the things that he does. I mean, I guess building up to that point of Wolverine number 10, if you've read it, which is a flashback issue, the Happy Birthday issue. Which is horrific. Like, I remember reading that as a kid, but maybe we'll do that another day.
I want to drill in on the Power Pack thing though, because we're almost there. I think we could talk about.
Yeah, let's talk about Power Pack.
Yeah, let's talk about
this idea. Like, so what did you think of? We've seen this like brutality for several issues of X Factor and X-Men, which is like kind of a tone, and then we shift, and like you said, issue starts with them putting popcorn down each other's pants, and then they kind of bear witness to all of that. Did that? I don't know. What did that do for how you were seeing this massacre unfold?
Like, I would love to read more Power Pack after reading this, but why were they there? This is when I was like, out of everything, I was like, there's no reason to involve these group of children in what your massacre is. You know what I mean?
Well, they go down there themselves, right? They see it on TV.
Yeah, I was okay with it because their friend came to them, right? Like, that's what happened, right? True. And it's their friend with with the injured Caliban. There is Leech, and they're superheroes by nature. And
who's sleeping down there, Oddfell? Who's sleeping in the bottom of the bunk bed?
Listen, I did not realize it was Franklin until like the last page. I
didn't either until you mentioned it.
Frank Richards.
I had just assumed it's like, because I remember the Power Pack in the Hickman. Yeah, I remember some of these characters. So I was like, okay. But it made sense to me that they're children first and foremost. So of course they're going to not listen, and they're going to want to do what they shouldn't be doing, which is help their friend, which means going somewhere they shouldn't go, because that's how kids are written. That's how we see it in every type of medium, right? Those kids in Stranger Things do everything on their own before the adults even get involved. So I was expecting it, and it didn't. I thought it was an interesting way to show it from these children's eyes, which makes it even more horrific.
Oh yes,
yeah. When you say it like that, right? I think it makes more sense because you're right. Yeah. It does make what our sweet baby boy Arty and we were going through makes it more real. But now that you've said that,
that's also one of my favorite moments in the Mutant Massacre when poor Angel, like I feel bad for Angel in this, and part of me feels bad, and part of me is like, dude, you need to quit simping for Jean, dude. You got Courtney. What's going on there, man? You're leading people on. You got money.
Her name was Candy.
So, but one of my favorite moments, and I thought it was really heartbreaking yet funny, was when the Marauders take him, right? Because he's trying to save Leech, or I'm sorry, Arty, and he tells Arty, this is very important. I need you to listen. You need to tell Jean this. And then, like, the next page is when he's hung up and he realizes, oh shit, Arty can't talk. I'm so stupid. I thought that was so heartbreaking, yet damn, dude, come on. Like, and then in comes Thor out of nowhere, which is a character I did not expect to show up in the first X-Men crossover.
Not like how he handled all the dead, I guess, at the end, right?
I was like, what, dude? Because this is funny. So I had X Factor and X-Men as a kid. I never got Thor until years later. So all I knew was there was a fire, and I was like, oh, Pyro must have gone down there and started a fire. Had I not read those issues of Thor, I still would have been confused. But no, it was Thor that did it, right? To clean up this dead mess that was down there. And you mentioned kids not listening. That also happens to the New Mutants, right? The New Mutants are like, we need to go down there. And Warlock turns himself into a car, and they're like, this is stupid. And he's like, but this is the best way we're going to get around. Self-friends. Oh, man. Reading Warlock dialogue, I'm sure, is not as painful as writing it. But this will lead into another thing with his dad, with Magus, which actually is the ending of this. And when everybody's like, what happened to the New Mutants? They must be dead. Not really. They just didn't listen, which is another thing that will come to play when it comes to New Mutants and Magneto being their leader. But I really like when Magic showed up and she's like, I'm going to go get Maura McTaggart. She's all the way in Scotland. She's probably taking a shower right now. We'll hang out in Limbo and I'll get her a suit, which I was...
Speaking of the suit,
here's a sick leather jacket. Like,
it was the 80s. That leather jacket was badass.
How was it awesome outfit?
I'm curious. I don't know how much you two read New Mutants. Did you feel as disoriented reading New Mutants as you did Power Pack? Because I was very disoriented in Power Packs. They were like, yeah, we switch powers and we're just doing all this.
Yes.
But like, I'm familiar with New Mutants, so I don't know if it felt like they also just dropped you in that. Because like I
not as much as Power Pack. I didn't understand why they were switching powers, and I want to know more because it ends kind of with that one kid like, oh, he does that better than even I can do it. And
I was like,
so it would be helpful to read that. But no, the New Mutants, I didn't feel as, because I think I had a base understanding of where the New Mutants were and where they fit in. So it wasn't as jarring to be dropped into the New Mutant world at that point when we got into it.
I feel like I know enough of those characters that was
with
fine.
Cannonball too. Cannonball.
Yeah, Cannonball.
Oh, you love Cannonball.
All you needed to do was read his thoughts. He was like, my paw done died in the coal mines.
I know. So
everybody works in the coal mines in Kentucky.
I know enough of the like New Mutants cast, so it's fine. But like Power Pack I've never read, so I don't know these kids.
Well, and New Mutants has also had a movie, right? Like
they look cool. Though.
It wasn't that great of a movie, but they had a movie at least.
It was better than most X-Men films. I will argue for it.
It was better than Madam Web.
Yeah, like.
Oh, please, let's do a reels talk on what was the worst X-Men film. But the cool thing that all of you are talking about was the whole purpose of crossovers. You all are saying things that was why they did crossovers. They were like, maybe this will get people to buy Power Pack. Maybe this will get people to buy New Mutants. And you want to know what, and that's why each of them, and kind of in a cliffhanger of their own, like Magus has nothing to do with the Mutant Massacre, but
Now
you
wanna
want to
know.
keep reading about it. You're like, oh, this
Yeah.
is Warlock's dad. This is kind of cool. And that's what got me to start buying things too. Like I bought Power Pack because of this crossover. So it worked. I saw
And
Wolverine on the cover.
modern
So many
Marvel
little things to add
understand.
in there. So
Yeah.
if you looked at some of the house ads at the back of the book, Power Pack was direct market only at this point. And some of the
Really?
house ads that had the Mutant Massacre
wow.
map, the famous map with the pipes that I reference all the time,
All the
Yeah.
time.
say, if you want the Power Pack issue, you will need to find your local comic book store. So that was a very deliberate way to get people who were reading X-Men off the newsstand, possibly the highest selling newsstand title at that time in like 1985, 86, to
Mhm.
go to comic book stores.
This is what makes mapping hard when it comes to omnibus editions, right? It's like you have to make decisions, especially when something like this, because you don't have a part 1, part 2, part 3, part 4. You have, okay, here are your options. You want to see what Wolverine's doing, or do you want to hang out with Sabertooth and his many misadventures with the Power Pack and Thor and also Daredevil for some reason, which isn't even part of this.
Well,
Yeah, that
that's
is
what's
interesting.
that's what's so interesting too, is because what makes a successful crossover issue, right? Like I've read all of New Mutants. I don't think I picked out that single issue was a tie-in to Mutant Massacre when I first read through New Mutants. And things like Daredevil, like Sabertooth is there, but if I was just reading Daredevil, I don't know if I would pick up that's a crossover. But something like Power Pack, very much so a crossover. And if you're reading Mutant Massacre, you want to know more Power Pack. And if you're reading Power Pack, you're probably like, what did these kids just walk into? So I think it's also interesting to see them trying to figure out what is making a good crossover with these titles, what's too subtle, what works, because you can tell they're trying to figure that out.
Yeah.
Yes.
The Thor one's a good example of that too, because you could tell what Thor walked into was.
Yeah.
Not
Not
right.
him.
Yeah. Not good.
And Thor's was really interesting too, because like I said, he had been, replaced, depowered, turned into a frog. Hela puts a curse on him, and all of a sudden he's back on Earth, and he's like, oh, my friend that happens to be a frog, because I was also a frog. Oh, I love editor's notes, and I miss them to this day.
I miss editor's notes.
God, they don't do that enough. But it's like, hey, my friend that was a frog when I was a frog during that time of Thor is telling me that there's a massacre happening in the freaking tunnels. I gotta go and investigate. And that's how Thor gets involved.
Well, and it's we have to be careful not to approach this sometimes with too modern of a viewpoint, because direct crossovers kind of didn't exist yet. Like there was sometimes the idea of like, okay, this specific issue ends in an issue of another title. But this idea of kind of direct multi-part crossovers wasn't a thing. This is in the same era as like Crisis was just doing Red Skies, basically. Yeah. So this crossover model of like they're loosely connected kind of in this order was how fans would expect it. If you told them you had to read these 9 issues from 4 different titles in order at this point in publishing, they'd be like, what the heck are you talking about? So but also I think that it adds something positive, like all of our reactions to Power Pack, the ability to see younger characters who don't exist in this brutal X-Men world reacting to this, and then to go all the way to the other side to Thor to see a character who's used to death and who has a relationship with the goddess of death experiences. That gave this so much texture. And I feel like now fans, if they see one random Thor issue tying into the fall of X, in the Krakoa age, they're like, why Thor in there? But that's what made comics amazing. The ability to get that texture. That part panel in Power Pack when Jack reels off and punches one of the Marauders and knocks him out, and Cyclops is like, you hit pretty hard. Like that was a way to see what all this looked like through a kid's perspective. And there's so little of that in the Marvel universe today. It really kind of bugs me. To me, that's a quintessential part of comic books, is all of those viewpoints.
Oh, absolutely. Because it makes it feel more real,
Yeah.
Like when bad things happen in the world, there's kids there, there's adults who have seen this there. And I think that's something that makes crossovers special.
Yeah.
One of the things that's also happening here, because like I said, so X-Men's focusing on, let's build up Mr. Sinister, right? Like he's going to be the big bad. X-Factor's doing their own thing too, because they're playing the long game. And one of the things is, I'm sure you all noticed, is Apocalypse showing up.
Yes.
Out of nowhere. He's like, you're coming with me. And from now on, you will be Pestilence, the first horseman of Apocalypse. Welcome to the party, pal. And you're like, he disappears. What the hell's happening? And then a couple of issues later, he shows up and he's like, "You who's in the Iron Lung, that sucks. You want to come and join my team?
I know.
I got room for 4, and I saved a slot for you." And the most tragic thing that happens, I'll talk a little bit after we talk about the main Mutant Massacre, who the 4th Horseman is, and why. Oh, that issue breaks my heart every time.
I figured that's where Mutant Massacre would end. That was because, like, again, I've read X Factor, so when I was trying to figure out where it would end, I thought it would be that, like,
15?
iconic issue. Like, I figured that would end.
So that's a good question. So so reading this without having read anything else around it, I was expecting, like, besides like the massacre in the like underground, I was expecting like a for real massacre to happen. Because at one point, you know, we have, I forgot which character it was, but she's looking over at the institute and she sees like death above it, and she sees it coming. And so it seems like they're alluding,
I love that character.
From just this amount, it seems like they're just alluding to just Sabertooth, which sounds silly.
The page you're talking
like, who
about.
is the actual person bringing? Yes,
that one.
Yes.
And so I
also
expected
Jones and Goose
something
artwork.
Oh my god.
Yeah,
real to happen to everyone there. I'm expecting some actually big, like, traumatic, huge massacre moment. Because if I hear massacre, that's what I'm hearing.
Yes.
And that's not really what's delivered in this.
No, you're right.
This is early on when Mirage, Daniel Moonstar, was tapping into her Asgardian power. So as it turns out, she was part of she was a Valkyrie. So now she can see these things like this. Like, her power before this was to project things that you're seeing, right? And make them. She has a really interesting power. But now she can see death, right? Which comes to play a lot in these particular stories, especially the Beyonder story in Secret Wars 2, which to this day is some of the most horrific ways kids die in a comic book. Like, oh my God. But what you're seeing here is kind of like things to come. Mainly, maybe not from the massacre, but maybe from another storyline. Because the next storyline is the Fall of the Mutants, which I would love to talk about because that is my all-time favorite X-Men crossover. Yeah. That is my all-time favorite.
I was going to say, it's very easy to feel like this is small scale after some of the atrocities mutants have gone through now.
Yeah.
But at the time, this was probably pretty massive. Because, like, again, I've read a lot of retrospectively, but, like, after reading, like, things like Genosha, this feels small. Yeah. But at the time, like, it was like, oh my God.
Okay.
I guess I was expecting, like, it was more like a Morlock massacre. More than, because I thought maybe then they would go to the X-Men.
Morlocks are mutants too, guys.
So
I know sad about it, obviously.
Yes.
Hashtag Morlocks are mutants.
Editorial didn't care about them, so why would they call it a massacre? Is what I'm saying. It's okay. Editorial doesn't care in DC or Marvel. They don't care about anything I love, as we know from Heroes in Crisis. But anyways, continue, Amanda.
No, I'm
all right. So the highlight I wanted to talk about was let's go to issue 212, which is the very first time Wolverine and Sabertooth meet in comic book, but not in comic book lore chronological order.
He's showing up sexy. His outfit is
Sabertooth or Wolverine, which one?
Wolverine.
I don't know. I don't know what you're into, Maddie. Yes, Morlocks are mutants too.
That's true. You're right. They are.
Just because they're not good looking.
I care about them. I'm saying editorial doesn't. It's on them.
So I love the ending of 211 where pretty much Storm is like, we need to go and interrogate somebody.
Yep.
And Wolverine,
we just need the one. You're authorized to use lethal force.
Everybody else is on. Yeah. Oh my God, I love that.
Which is one of those moments of Storm as a leader where I think Cyclops would have never said that. Like that's
Cyclops would have been like, "Don't hurt anybody on the way down, and stop smoking those cigars, Wolverine."
Cyclops is not down for murder until X-Force. Like he's still like maybe not.
Many years.
Yes,
I'm a square, but I will leave my wife.
Oh, but this is the first time that they they fight, and this is the whole thing that you all were talking about. Like, I thought they had fought before because it's dialogue.
This honestly feels like it's been a long-term beef. Like the writing is superb because I also I don't read a lot of Wolverine personally, so this to me, I was like, oh, of course they probably fought in like a Wolverine solo or something.
I thought.
No, that was the first time they fought, and
Wow,
212 is the first
wild.
comic book I ever read. Oh, Jake,
Really?
such a
Wow,
great
what a
comic.
comic.
Cyclops kills it in Inferno, so he can't say it.
It's a great
He
issue.
does. He does.
I mean,
So
for me, the next issue is actually possibly my favorite X-Men issue of all
213.
time.
213
Yeah,
has my
but-
favorite fight with Wolverine.
But,
and
but
Sabertooth.
this
And-
issue, the thing that always stands out to me is when Storm is kind of just like
Yes.
wandering around, rending her clothes from her body in the landscape. But it's very real because she's mourning. She was supposed to protect these Morlocks, and she kind of feels the same way as she was supposed to protect her people originally before Xavier kind of pulls her into the X-Men. And she's like, do I just fail at this every time I try to do it? And then Kalisto kind of comes out and gives her a reality check.
Yes.
And I just love that scene.
I-
It's so complex.
Agree.
It is. I
I
agree. That's probably my
adore-
favorite part of this issue.
Mm-hmm. I
And
absolutely.
this is also
adore
during the time when Kalisto is not Joe Mad pretty Kalisto. She's kind of like Morlock pretty Kalisto during this
I
time.
like her. She's
I,
got
I,
Yeah.
extra.
Go ahead. You all you wait.
I want
You
off of
cosplayed
the
as
topic.
that
I
character.
want-
yeah, I'm like, I'll go on forever. So you guys go first.
No.
Please, go.
Yeah, go ahead.
I absolutely love her dynamic with Storm because she even says it in this issue, like, I'm still your rival, but I respect you. And like, that's always been their
Yeah.
dynamic. It's so good. And the fact she like going into this conversation is like, wouldn't it be great if I took the X-Men from her, like gave her that
Yeah.
same
Oh, I
feeling?
love that.
But then seeing this person she respects down so low, instead she's like, here's your vest, get up. You have to
Oh,
be
I
like,
love that
it's
page.
That's-
so
yeah.
complex. It's so good. I genuinely love their dynamic so much. Like, I know I'm biased because I love Kalisto, but like, very well
Question:
done.
Is she? Because
I think so.
I'm getting the vibe. I
the
was like,
newer X books make it feel so. So
I was like, I feel something here.
yeah, I think so.
Okay,
What are you?
gay.
Omar just subtext just went
He's
right.
like, I don't understand.
She gets a little flirty with Emma in the Hickman era. So
Ah.
I got
she's,
the vibe.
she's such a fantastic character. They play this really long running plot of her body dysmorphia of like, does she feel like she's a pretty person stuck in an ugly body or an ugly person stuck in a pretty body?
Oh,
And
yes.
every time it gets reversed, she kind of, I love her. One of my top mutant characters for sure.
Okay,
and
I
it's
wanna read
so
more
palpable
Kalisto.
with her
Same.
past being a model too before her mutation. Like, it's so palpable. Is like, oh god, it's
Oh, I'm getting
I
that.
didn't
And Claire-
Yeah, it
Claremont-
makes me wanna cry.
Like Claremont tried and tried to get her, on the team and on the books.
Yeah.
But editorial was always like, not the look we're going for.
Okay,
Right,
check the new
unfortunately, at that
Kalisto
It's not, I mean,
recommendations.
although he did finally get her in, what was it, Excalibur, where she had the tentacles coming out of her heart. But at
I'm
least
sorry.
we got her to join the X-Men anyway. But I don't like to talk about those books.
I meant that in a very normal reaction way.
it's very
What the poor X-Men killed off and replaced by pod people. All that needs to happen is just somebody needs to wake up and it was all a bad dream. There's always a loophole and ways to work around these things. We don't know where we're gonna go after this.
Still have a
213.
stream about it. So wait, before we get to 213, I love that 212. It's the perfect example of what made X-Men great, and I think like why we nostalgic X-Men readers are still like X-Men's amazing, and we demand so much. Here we have this marquee Wolverine and Sabertooth fight, the first ever, clearly a key issue for that reason. And here we all are talking about Kalisto and Storm having a fight, beneath a laundry line. Like
Here
that's
you
what
guys
X-Men
are.
is. That's what X-Men, like, a great
Yeah.
X-Men issue should always be both of those things, right? That's no other comic did that as well as X-Men. This issue, that even though it's not 213 is my actual favorite, 212 to me is like, this is X-Men.
I didn't know that when I invited you on. That's awesome. Let's not forget what's going on with all the bodies.
Yes, of course.
Right, Magneto trying to prove himself. Like, look, I'm actually a good guy. God damn it, I'm not just a bad guy. I'm
You're gonna
going to heal Colossus. And he starts healing Colossus, like, because Moria is like, I don't know what to do with this guy. He's made of metal. I think he's dead. And Psylocke's like, no, he's not dead. I can still sense something in there. By the way, I've always been a fan of Sharon Friedlander and Tom Corsi, who are two side characters in the New Mutants that no one else remembers, except for me, Peter, and probably Chris Claremont. And that's it. But I love that they showed up in here.
Long suffering. That's supporting characters.
Man, Claremont was like race swapping long before Hollywood was. That's all I'm gonna say. And I'll leave it at that. But that's one of my favorite moments. It's like Magneto's like, let me show you I'm a good guy. And I'm gonna heal Colossus. And then you start to see, holy crap, yes, Kitty cannot unface. So she's stuck in this phasing, which eventually gets resolved, or probably that leads into the Fantastic Four X-Men miniseries, which is phenomenal, by the way. And Colossus.
Sorry, I don't know. I was like, I don't know how this gets fixed.
Oh, it gets fixed in Excalibur. Like when you go read Excalibur, it's so good.
I'm not far into Excalibur yet. I need to.
You're almost there. So and then you've got Nightcrawler, who's in a coma, also Excalibur. And then you've got Colossus, who can't move, but is smiling. So that's a plus.
I was worried about Kitty because Psylocke says she might cease to exist. I was like, wait, what's going to happen?
Oh, that's the whole plot of, one of the big plots in the X-Men Fantastic Four miniseries. She is about to disappear. Okay. So Reed Richards has to get in there and try to fix things. And it's a really cool, interesting storyline. All right,
real quick, Psylocke is the fashion icon of this. I know no one asked for that opinion, but I need you to know that the X Factor failed us. Rogue's hairstyle is a hate crime. So is the makeup done on her in Bloomingdale's. But the true fashion icon of this is Psylocke. Thank you very much. I rest my case.
Well, she was a supermodel, right? Yeah.
But also, like, if I paid for makeup and I turned around in the mirror and that's what they gave me, I would be like,
right.
And she was like, "Oh, I'm living."
And Alison Blair, I don't want to hear this. They give her great makeup. Okay,
offensive.
We've seen '80s movies. That's not like that. That's awful.
You did not do my girl Rogue like that.
They only had so many colors they could work with in
comics. It does not matter. All of it was a travesty.
No, those garage doors, blue eyeshadow. No,
it's.
I didn't know that's what my birthday
stream was going to turn into. Everywhere else, lovely.
All right, wait. I think it depends on the artist, right? I think it depends on look how cute Ellen Davis makes her look. With Paul Neary, rest in peace.
It's still a short I don't know. I'm not a fan of it.
I would be cool with the mullet if it wasn't the stripe all the way back. Yes. I know it's probably that her hair is slicked back.
Are we really reviewing this part of the Mutant Massacre?
What happened?
Yes.
This is critical information.
Very important.
Listen, 80s and 90s comic book outfits are my favorites. This era is some of my favorites, but there are major faux pas still.
I mean, look at what she's wearing. She's in like a athletic suit, but then she's got an oversized sweatshirt with the arms cut off on top of it. And then she's got these little high heel boots with like rolled down. I mean, it's just so next level.
There's a reason that people only talk about
Pete.
And
the belt,
that it's like belt. It on. That's when people talk about Rogue, because this was something.
It's not it.
I'm all about Rogue.
But
I am all about Rogue.
Sleeves on Psylocke, though. I mean, come on.
Although
we all want that shirt.
Oh my gosh,
that last issue, that new outfit is one of my favorite Psylocke outfits of all time.
So good.
So this is before
the best page ever drawn in an X-Men comic book.
So I love that. Yes.
This is before Psylocke was Asian, which we'll talk about another time in Acts of Vengeance, because I feel like we need to, because it is a pivotal point in the X-Men lore. But Psylocke was joining the team in New Mutants Annual number 2. She was a character from Captain Britain, which was a Marvel UK comic, and her eyes got ripped out. Peter, who was the villain that ripped her eyes? Who was it? Spymaster? Slaymaster, that guy. Oh, I hated that guy. She was Captain Britain for a minute, and I mean a minute, for like 2 issues. Got her eyes ripped out. She was blind.
Mm.
And then Mojo World got involved, and Spiral gave her new eyes. That's why she made a comment in this issue, in the 213 issue, where she was like, "Oh, my cybernetic eyes can see." Oh no, 214 with Dazzler can see past her light show. Just to remind you that she's got cybernetic eyes. That's kind of
So
how
she
it
is
happened.
much older than I expected. From
Yeah.
like, what,
I mean,
what
younger than Brian Braddock. That's the wine talking. Brian Braddock, but still older than the New Mutants, right? The New Mutants
Yeah.
were
Old, young enough that Claremont has her and Doug in a very suspicious.
it's a
romantic
weird
relationship.
relationship.
That took me off guard because I've only ever seen her like interloping into some of Excalibur, and then obviously later when she merges with Quanon. But I was like, Doug,
That guy.
like
My
16-year-old.
God.
I was like, what?
Nobody likes Doug.
It's a different time. The 80s.
Oh,
I
we
think
gotta
Dave
review
does.
Fall of the Mutants. We gotta review Fall of the Mutants. So she is thrown in with the New Mutants, right? As of annual number 2, and this 212 is her first X-Men appearance. Because Marvel UK was a different beast. The mullet. Those were good times, Tiger Eyes, okay? Chicken pox and mullets. That's what
Mullets
it was all
are
about.
back.
I have a mullet right now. Like,
What?
Do not.
You don't
I'm
have a
growing out my
mullet.
pixie cut, so it is kind of. I just have it pinned back.
Is there a
Is that
subcategory to a mullet that
Well,
I
I
didn't
feel like
know
I've
about?
grown it out enough now. When it was a mullet for a little bit.
Interesting.
There's
Okay.
good mullets, so it's fine.
Yeah.
There's,
grow out
did you say
favor
there's
having
good
an undercut.
mullets? Maddie, we grew up in Kentucky. There's no such thing as a good mullet.
I mean,
Yeah.
I wasn't that far with my scene haircut before, so
That's
Oh.
such
A
mood.
lot,
I am learning so much about you
a
people.
lot of scene haircuts and like mullets.
yeah, I was really cool.
So 213, which is kind of like the wrap-up issue. Like Cyclops is like, hey, everybody's hurt. Jean. Oh, by the way, it's very important to note that Jean during this time did not have like telepathic powers. She only had telekinesis.
Mhm.
Oh, okay.
Telepathy comes a little bit later, which after Fall of the Mutants is when it comes.
She does
But,
have her telepathic rapport with Cyclops, but I think it's only Cyclops. I think.
Maybe
Because we
that's
get some of the dotted line conversations, but I think it's only him at this point.
Oh, I thought they were whispering. Like, hey,
I don't know. I always
Angel
think of
lost
dotted
all
lines
his money.
as telepathy, but I don't know.
Angel lost all his money and he really likes you. I know, but I really like you, Scott.
So tired.
Oh my gosh. So that wraps up with the storyline with the Berserker and those guys going with Scott and then leaving and pretty much all dying with the exception of Mask. And then they're having to amputate Angel's wings because they've been so hurt. And then we get X-Men, where Sabertooth is now invading the mansion. Like, he's going to take him out. It's interesting because I always forget that all these issues were drawn by different people. You had John Romita Jr., and then you have Rick Leonardi, and then you have Alan Davis joining this
It
final
felt
issue.
really consistent, though.
It did.
Surprisingly.
Probably a lot to do with the colors by, was it Joe Roses, I think, did the colors during this time?
I think so.
But Sabertooth, Sabertooth is just all over the place. They were like, we're going to make this guy the guy
Monster.
from Mutant Massacre. He's going to be everywhere. So he takes out Rogue, who at this time is one of the strongest characters. Like, Rogue just joined the X-Men back in like 177, 178 during the From the Ashes storyline. But she's absorbed all of Carol Danvers' powers. So she's as powerful as Miss Marvel during this time. And she gets taken out, but so does like Psylocke. Psylocke is still trying to find the New Mutants with the big old Cerebro. And Sabertooth's like, I'm here. And he destroys Cerebro. And you can't replace Cerebro. You can't find that like parts for Cerebro at Lowe's.
No, you cannot.
Like that's Shi'ar
Well, they just
technology.
established that Kitty is one of the only ones of them that knows what she's doing enough to fix it, and she's
Yeah.
phased. So, like,
Yeah.
this, this is what I mean about, like, Claremont's ever so slowly just taking apart all of the things that you know and recognize about X-Men in this period, which is really
100%.
fascinating to me. But yeah, Psylocke introduced in a New Mutants annual, and they do this thing where all the X-Men teams sort of initially kind of like make out that every new member, especially if it's a woman, maybe should be on the New Mutants, right? They did it to Kitty, they did it to Rachel. They always are like, you maybe you're a New Mutants member, right? But to Claremont's credit, all of the new members in this whole period are women, which is why it keeps recurring. And so here she is in the mansion, and they're like, we don't need a psychic. You're weak. You're just some British lady. You're practically a kid. And this is her issue to really be like, I am as much of a superhero as the rest of you, even though I don't have any kind of offensive capability. And I've read this issue probably more than any other X-Men issue other than the last 3 Claremont issues from 1991. I cannot express to you how obsessed I am with this issue.
It is such a good Betsy issue. Like, genuinely, it's such a good issue.
I love that she the whole time since issue 212 has to prove her worth, right? She's like, these people don't know who I am. If they could only hear my thoughts, I'm cursing in here. And if only they could hear me talk, I curse like a sailor, which I wish Claremont could have written that into this book, the comics code. I would have loved to have heard Betsy just go the fuck off on things. But we didn't get that, right? Like, we just kind of get her expressing her thoughts, but she's being chased down by this ruthless killer, and I guess that's kind of why, and I just realized this, why they set him up to be like that he has been killing all these Morlocks, not only in the pages of X-Men, but also X-Factor, Power Pack, and Daredevil, and Thor, and now he's confronting this young lady who can read thoughts with butterflies, can express her thoughts with telepathic butterflies. A rich British woman. Man, I didn't think about that, honestly, until just now.
Yeah.
They kind of like built him up to be this badass killer, and then she gets to fight him and try to survive this character that a lot of characters have lost their lives to. Oh,
yeah.
Nice. I like that. Peter, which I'm sure you've already thought about, is just taking me 30 years to think about, but
well,
is that why you like
on
this
the page? Yeah, I mean, even on the page before where he's doing his thing where he's taunting her, which he taunts all targets, but especially we've established towards women, and she just turns it right back around and says, talk is cheap, Sabertooth, prove it. Like, I just love that she immediately turns the tables, which also speaks to, as a psychic, she knows how to push people's buttons, right? And like, that's what she's doing here. She knows she's physically outmatched, but she's taunting him more than he's taunting her. And even as a kid, because I had this back issue, I just love the dynamic. I didn't understand why she wasn't a ninja yet, and I didn't understand why they didn't know who she was, because I didn't understand this was like her second issue of X-Men. But I was like, she's mocking him, and as she's dangling off of the gutter of the house, and it's just, I just think it's iconic.
Man, and the way she throws that barbell with the weights and those legs.
Yeah, legs are
doing
great.
some CrossFit. She's doing some CrossFit.
Well, and she even proves herself as a hero because she's leading Sabertooth in the beginning away from where Moira and all the injured.
I love that.
And they're like, "Oh, she's doing that. She's doing that to save us, and we got to lock ourselves in." I mean, that's what I noticed when I read this, because you see her throughout the different issues, and she's kind of there, and no one wants her to help, and she doesn't know what to do. This is her chance. And that's what I love about this issue, too. This is probably one of my favorite issues.
Yeah, I really fell for her in this.
Yeah.
Like, I've never thought about Psylocke, really.
Neither did I. And when I did, it was about
I love her.
Actress.
And then she's like, I got it. I'm going to figure out why they're doing this, who's behind this. But we have to trick him into... Because he's got these psionic like barriers in his head, which is later explained, and I mean much later. So she's like, I can't get past them, but if we can like get him focused on a fight, then maybe I can read what's going on in his. Oh my God, she becomes such an important part of the X-Men. And I love this shot right there.
Oh yes, I know.
You know, you have this
action.
amazing shot of Psylocke, and you have this fight between Wolverine and Sabertooth, just brutal. Oh my god! If they could allowed blood in the comics code era, that would have been blood instead of like sweat and whatever the hell's coming out of their mouths. Oh my god, it's so good.
Was spitting out in the comics.
And also Psylocke still serving a look after her whole costume is like all shredded up. Now she's got like,
she actually looks better like when she's
she looks good. I would have been fine with her keeping that costume. But I love the part where Wolverine's like she's an X-Men.
Yeah, that was great.
This look right here.
Outfits. It's so good.
It's so good.
That's pretty. I like that.
That's cosplayable. That's beautiful. That's perfect.
That is
it makes
very
up for Rogue.
Good. It's so 80s, so like perfect.
Incredible.
There's this amazing cosplayer, Demanda Martini,
Yes.
who's known for doing amazing Betsy era Psylocke
Really?
cosplay.
All right, I need to
Yeah, I
follow.
just
I
saw
love
her
her
post
so
on
much.
this week.
She does an amazing Vertigo as well, since you just met Vertigo in the comics.
Vertigo, yeah. I was gonna ask, does anybody cosplay as the ugly Morlogs? Because that would be fun.
Oh my
I'm gonna roll out an Arty costume, just you wait. Get the
I want to
eyes.
see.
I was just going to cons and be like,
and-
free
and-
photo
and-
shoots for
Erg
this
and
era
A.
Psylocke cosplayer. Thank you.
Drew does not agree. Y'all crazy. She looks like a circus peanut in that.
I love it. I don't know. It's so camp, but it's so good. Like
Right.
I love the really over the top, insane comic outfits.
It gives me like Disney princess superhero vibes. That's what it gave me.
Then we have one more issue that we need to talk about, and that is the issue 214 with Malice. So Malice was given a task. Malice was told by the Marauders to go out and deal with Allison Blair, who at this time didn't have her own title. Her ongoing series was canceled, and because of the graphic novel and the movie, like she kind of became a backup to Lila Cheney. Intergalactic Lila Cheney. I love this part because it just shows like
this, but...
Barry Windsor Smith, by the way, same guy that did Weapon X, same guy that did X-Men 205, Life, Death. But in Conan, of course. But he worked on this issue. So Malice is this mutant that can put her body inside of other people's body and have them do whatever she wants them to do, manipulate them, and take control of them. So that's what she does. She takes over Allison Blair, Dazzler, and Allison quits Lila's group and starts just doing her thing, being a little extra and getting people's attention.
My favorite thing about this is less so about the story, but about how like the art and how she was drawn, how like her powers were drawn, because it feels very Ghibli in a way. Because if you look at that bottom right panel right there, that looks very reminiscent of a lot of like Ghibli power. Think of like Princess Mononoke, right? And like how the forest spirit looks in those things, like the way that they draw this sort of like kind of like circly ways. I think it makes me think of that. Like you think of like Ponyo, we think of like a lot of like Ghibli art, and I loved this. Not just, I was so distracted by how beautiful it was.
Barry Windsor Smith is one of the greatest artists.
With how this was put together, because it just shows a very unique way to show her powers that I was not expecting as someone who hasn't read a lot of Dazzler. And also, I don't know if I'm yelling. I apologize. You can always tell
You're
me.
not yelling.
No, you're not yelling.
I don't worry about it.
I mean, I yell about Dazzler, so if you were yelling, I would understand.
Oh my God, Peter and fucking Dazzler. I'm
an easy mark for any comic book issue with like a good rock show kind of vibe. Even the first Dazzler appearance where Scott and Jean go to her concert. there's just something about it. In what,
Peter? What was that? In what?
Uncanny X-Men 129 or 130? What is
part of the what storyline?
Oh, the Dark Phoenix. That would be in the Dark Phoenix Saga Omnibus, probably. I would imagine.
I asked that we not bring this up, Omar. Listen, this was years ago. Okay, James tried to mention. I said no, we won't.
We're not talking about Dark Phoenix Saga.
I don't need
This
to
is why I was drinking tonight, because I thought you guys were going to tear apart the Mutant Massacre.
Listen, this is the first time Peter and Oddfellow are here, and I don't need this kind of hate online.
Exactly.
I love that there's multiple Dark Phoenix Saga inside jokes at this point, to the point where everyone just dreads bringing up Dark Phoenix Saga.
No, just me. I dread bringing it
It's
up, but I
because we
had to bring
rated
it
it
up.
so low, and we would have rated it
We
lower.
did
had
not
been
like
Omar's birthday.
They didn't like it, but you know what?
And you came late, Omar. You were late to the stream because you
I
were
was drunk
drinking.
to the stream, just like I am right now. Okay, that's not on me. That's on past Omar. It's not my fault. I'm here now. Omar can't pour fast. I can't. I need an intern that can pour me some wine. That's all I need to
To
do.
be fair, someone mentioned earlier, what is Jean? She's not doing much in this, though, really, realistically.
Oh, she's carrying a lot of people back to the X Factor headquarters,
Yes,
right?
yes, that's what she's doing.
Because everybody's
does
like,
like being-
can't carry them.
Carrying the X-Men.
And being lusted after by two men, yes.
She does
Come
not
on.
really gain relevance again until Inferno, and then they do a phenomenal job.
Excellent.
Which I know Inferno is divisive, but it's a very good Jean and Maddie story. If nothing else, everything around it's kind of hit or miss. But
So Dazzler.
So
Dazzler, right?
I think
Dazzler.
that, at least for me, like, this is a very good issue for explaining Malice, a very good Dazzler issue. It explains a lot of the things that are to come very well. I thought it was a very weird way to end not only Mutant Massacre, but an omnibus, because I felt kind of unsatisfied at the end, because it feels like it's a setup, not a conclusion.
It felt very anticlimactic. I was like, oh,
Mhm.
well, this is how we're ending the Mutant Massacre. I thought after we find out, who is behind it, that no, we're just gonna.
Oh, you don't find out.
I guess we're
who's-
spoiled by today's like crossovers, right? Because these
guess.
big crossovers, and
You don't
like
You don't
a
see
good thing
Mr.
about this, at
Sinister.
least they, unlike Hick Avengers, they're like, hey, are you curious about what this is? It happened in this issue. Unlike Hick Avengers, which never did that. I'm used to these big, like, conclusive things where I expect something to happen by the end of it, and I didn't have any of that. So I was just like, okay, I've enjoyed it, but this didn't deliver what I'm used to feeling.
I keep thinking,
Yeah.
like,
I expected it to go a little bit more past this issue.
Oh,
Yeah.
we can go more.
Oh, so did you guys read the? I got out my big hunker. Are you
Yeah.
Oh
reading the
no,
2010
I
version?
just read what
But-
Omar
but
said.
honestly,
Oh,
this-
okay. Omar told me to reread the whole book.
Wow.
Because
So
I'm ready to talk about this, Peter.
I would have read. Well, actually, it's probably
Listen,
written-
this is a big book. Here's the thing: even in this, it's anticlimactic
okay.
because that's just the way these stories were. They weren't real, like true events, right? You're used to events like,
War of the Realms.
yes, like War of the Realms that have a beginning and an ending.
Mhm.
And I wish I was as drunk as Omar.
You don't
Oh,
need to know, Michael. You don't even know.
Oh.
If you look up Old Reader, New Reader, and Dark Phoenix on this show,
Yes.
you'll find
James,
it.
are you
Please
still in
don't
chat?
judge us.
James will get you that link.
oh, James got on the link, but there are things that are like this is one long soap opera. That's the beauty of X-Men. Events just happen here and there, but X-Men is like, hey, I want you to keep reading this because you fell in love with this character, and if you care about this character, then you need to keep reading the story. And oh, now that you're reading the story, you also like this character. Well, this character now appears over here. And that's the thing of comics, right? Of what we call monthly floppies, that we have a constant story going on. And for 17 years, we were blessed with Chris Claremont writing these X-Men stories and starting a bunch of plot points and stories that he got to tell later on, like playing the long game, which he was doing here with Mr. Sinister, because Mr. Sinister doesn't even appear until the 221, and then that gets resolved in the whole Inferno saga after the Fall of the Mutants. But yeah, Fall of the Mutants has more of a closure. Inferno has more of a closure.
Okay.
Mutant Massacre is like, we killed a bunch of Morlocks. We're gonna need new X-Men. And Wolverine's surrounded by beautiful women, and he's like, I'm gonna need some dudes on this team. How about Longshot? That guy seems pretty cool. And Havoc. Like when these X-Men end up joining the team, it's kind of like they're scraping the bottom of the barrel for characters because your big characters are gone or hanging out with X Factor, and it's really
the
cool to
first
see what
big team
Claremont did.
change since giant size. I mean, this whole time
Yes.
we've had Nightcrawler, we've had Colossus, like we got Kitty, we got Rachel, but there was this core of the giant sized characters that never left. Even Cyclops leaves, and we still have pretty much that core of Colossus, Nightcrawler, Wolverine, Storm. And so this is the first time that Claremont, within 4 issues, we just disassembled the X-Men. We have a totally different team. At this point, it's all women and Wolverine, and it's like that's pretty seismic shift, right?
Well, and
imagine reading this monthly back then.
I just like if I were to collect this, I really expected it to at least go till X Factor 15.
Well, we can discuss X Factor 15 another day. Because X Factor,
that's kind of where I would cut it for like plot suspense.
Yeah, but that's such a sad ending. That's
like before Apocalypse. It's a perfect cutoff.
All right, calm down, you nerd. I know.
I would like to read more now. Surprisingly, I wasn't expecting that because
Well, you came to the right place, Maddie.
I would like to. And I want to read Power Pack. Words I didn't think I would.
No one has ever said that.
I would like to read.
I'm kind of invested.
Power Pack omnibuses are glorious.
I want to read
amazing.
Power Pack.
I love Power Pack. It's so cute and good. And Katie.
And I'm worried about my friend Arty. I'm really worried about him. I need to read more so I know he's okay.
Thank you, Philip. The Dark Phoenix birthday was epic. Score so low it hurt. And they were sugarcoating it. I forgot about that part. Y'all were sugarcoating it because I was drunk. Just like I am right now.
He was so angry. So we were all just like, yeah, it's fine.
And I think we said, like, there's a reason why they can't make a good adaptation.
Ouch.
Now
Ouch.
it makes sense.
Everybody builds it up like it's this big thing. It's like they're in the they're at an S&M party for 3 issues and then they go to space. Like it's not a saga.
Okay, wait a minute, Peter. Wait a damn minute.
And listen, I love Sunstone, so I don't know what that says about me about this. So.
Peter, how do you feel about the Dark Phoenix Saga, Peter?
I just think, and that it's a great, amazing X-Men story, beautiful art, a lot of stuff, but people get this idea in their heads when they hear Saga. It's just like when people talk about the Kree Skrull War, and people get that Kree Skrull War hardcover, and they're like, "Oh, this is so badass." It's not an event. It's like it's happening in the background of the Avengers issues, and people just don't really understand that that's what a saga or a war was in 1970s and early 1980s.
Peter. Go ahead.
Okay.
Finish that thought.
Listen, I'm not against attempting it again after having read some other X-Men.
Oh, shit.
That for you, Omar, my love for you.
Okay.
I do worry consistently, even before this. I was like, Pitchfork's going to be out. I'm going to disappoint him again. I was worried.
It's okay. That's why I picked you and Amanda to be part of Old Reader, New Reader when I began that journey, because I wanted people that did not agree with me. Like Peter and I disagree a lot on stories. Like, for example, like Peter really enjoys like who is it that you like, Peter, on X-Men now? Kieran Gillen, right?
I think Kieran Gillen is the best X-Men writer, period.
Okay. I like good stories. See, like there's a big difference.
Hey, Omar!
Wow, that's the one talking. That's the one talking
in the next Evergreen.
You know, I love it.
I didn't think we were coming out savage on this one. I thought that was just.
I wasn't expecting that.
It's Omar's birthday.
I had a button-up shirt and a wine glass. I came ready.
So I want to talk to our new readers for a second. Like what did you? So we talked at the beginning about what you thought you were going to get. You thought the X-Men were going to like know each other more and be more together and maybe resemble some of the X-Men cast that you knew from other media. I kind of want to talk about like where do you place this in your spectrum of what you already know about X-Men?
That's tough because again, I've read more newer X-Men.
Yeah.
So I've read a lot more newer stuff. So yeah, in a lot of cases they are separated. There's a lot of interesting social and family dynamics, I guess you could say, throughout here.
This one's so interesting because even in modern X-Men, Kitty names a whole team the Marauders, and they're like, whoa, you can't name a team the Marauders. Do you remember what the Marauders did? Like this piece of X-Men history kind of is omnipresent in how they react to things now in 2000 whatever year this is, 2024.
Yeah, I will say I've liked it more after, and this is the case with some books, but there are sometimes I read books for this show and I enjoy them a lot more and I appreciate them more after discussing that with other people.
Agreed.
If I'm just on my own, I don't have all the context and we're not discussing what everything means for these characters and, you know, how this stands up historically and how this sets up other things. If it's just me, I come up with a lesser appreciation for it than I do now after having talked about it and like getting to like really dissect something. Because on its own, I was worried because again, this isn't now that I have the knowledge this is like the first crossover, right? This is very different than like complete story arcs that I'm used to reading.
Yeah.
And so it feels very disjointed and it feels like a mess. In hindsight, which is that this doesn't mean this is good or bad, it just means like compared to now, that's how I feel, which is not atypical of a lot of like, I don't know, even like pre-2000s books that I've read compared to like what we have now. So I was worried coming into this and then like I've read it all with you and then I feel a lot differently after having discussed it. But I wasn't expecting this so much. Again, and part of it's a massacre in the name. I read a lot of books, read a lot of novels. When you say massacre, I expect massacre. Not that I'm yearning for that, but I'm expecting to be destroyed emotionally. And I'm sad, but it's not what I was expecting.
Yeah, I would say the same thing. It wasn't what I was expecting either. But when you're describing, like setting context, you set context really well. That made me appreciate it more listening to your context around what was going on. And I had read a little bit like, okay, I had read on the internet that this was like the first crossover event. So I went in kind of understanding that it probably wasn't going to be perfect. And it was kind of anticlimactic for me because I think I was expecting a bigger event. And since it was its first one, it did feel disjointed throwing certain characters in there, like throwing in Power Pack and Thor and definitely the Daredevil issue felt disjointed for me. And like Maddie said, messy, but the way you put it into context, it makes more sense and you can appreciate it a little bit better that way.
Well, and that's why always, you know, I think there's this need for hardcore nostalgic X-Men fans. Like they want everybody to experience all of the X-Men that they love. You got to read Dark Phoenix. You got to read Mutant Massacre. Not just Omar, even if I was doing Omar just there. But I think that when you send readers to these places, like without context and without kind of anything surrounding it, sometimes it can be a turn off because it's like not the X-Men that they know and the story doesn't make sense and there's no conclusive end and it's not like one big cohesive story. And that's how people are like, oh, I don't know, I tried Claremont, I didn't like it. And part of that was down to how it was collected, right? For years, this was my first oversized hardcover back in 2010. It was like the original shorter vertion of the oversized hardcover. And I actually had
214. I don't think that one even
I think it ended on 214. I want to say, but I had that as floppies. But even then, so if you got 2010 and you started, I had never read issues 202 to 209. They were too expensive for me, and I didn't have them. So I think that like we're in a very different world now. But still, like a lot of these big event omnibuses that we talk about all the time interchangeably on the channel. Oh, have you read this? Have you read that? Like people don't. I just think we give people the wrong idea about them, that they're this perfect encapsulating thing. Like it's picking up the Devil's Reign omnibus or the War of the Realms omnibus. It's just not the same experience.
No, you're 100% right. I agree with that. Yeah.
I think
as a new reader, yes.
Even though at one point do we call ourselves not new readers, that we've been doing this for like now.
Well, you're still new to this.
Yeah, because there's still parts of comic books.
I was new to Poison Ivy. I had never read Poison Ivy.
Wild.
See, it still works.
I tuned in for that because you had Bar.
It's so good. It's
and
so
I
good.
really liked it. Right?
Yeah, I guess really in some avenues, I'm an older reader, depending on the publisher.
Yeah, there's still. I think even for people like me and Peter, there are things that we haven't read that I would love to. Like, if it wasn't for this show, I probably or Bar forcing herself to make
everyone should read Poison Ivy.
Poison Ivy. I don't think I would have read Poison Ivy, and it was really good. So much so that I read the second freaking volume, and now I can't wait for the third one.
Maddie, I've never read Classic Titans. None of it.
What? Not all of it is good. I'll be
like Mark Wolfman.
Not. I literally. I mean, I've like seen it for my guides, but I've never sat down with a book of Titans and just read it.
But you've read the Judas Contract.
No.
What the fuck?
I'm a Marvel
Listen, I'll
zombie.
talk
I'm
about-
like new reader on almost anything
Which is
DC that's not
wild.
Wonder Woman.
Because to me,
Yeah.
you're like the person that helped me build my Titans collection. Which
You're-
is, I mean, I reorganized back here. You can't see it all, but I mean,
I really thought you had read that. Oh my gosh, Peter.
girl, the life, the love,
Yeah, she's a big
I
fan of
love
Zombie
it.
Troy.
Yeah, she is.
the lady.
As confusing as that lady is.
Listen, it's our fault.
So, okay. At the end of every show of Old Reader, New Reader, we do rate the book we read. So I'm gonna let
No.
Maddie
Can
and
I go last?
Amanda go first.
No, can I go last?
Oh, it's only fair.
No, it's
It's my show. I will go
There you
last.
go.
Oh shit, it is your show. I'm
I
sorry.
will
That's
go
the wine
show.
talking. I'm done with
I
the
will go
wine.
last.
That's all the one I've got. All right. What do you got? Maddie, who goes first?
Omar, you can go first. And then you
Mutant
choose the
Massacre?
next person.
Oh my god. Oh god. Yeah. Okay. Not thinking nostalgic, rereading it. Daredevil was like, oh, Innocenti, what are you doing? 9 out of 10. I love this book. I love this story. It changed so much, and mixing that nostalgia with who I am now, almost 46 years old, it still feels the same. And there's beautiful, beautiful dialogue in this. Like Claremont and Wheezy, like both of them were just writing like top tier stories. I loved it. The narration, everything, the dialogue, the thought bubbles, things you don't really get in comics nowadays. Just beautifully written. Taught me so many words. I love it. Yeah. Let's say 9.5 out of 10. 9.5 out of 10.
He said
Okay.
he wants to give it a 10 so bad.
I wanted to give it, but that deserves
Give it
that's fall of the mutants.
Okay.
All right, who's next, Maddie? I'm sorry, it's your show.
I'll say Peter, and then Ockville, and then Amanda, and then me. I'll go and set the
Oh, you're gonna go last. Okay.
I already said
You're gonna
I
go
would.
last. Okay.
It's your birthday. You chose a book. It's my show. I get to go.
I love it.
I feel like we're
Okay.
most experienced reader down because I knew half of it. So we're just going from like you guys know the story.
Oh, did you say most experienced now? Is that what you
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
You are more
Alright,
familiar with the story. I've only read half of it before this, and
Then
then
me and Maddie are on the same level.
No, I have no idea how familiar Peter is with
so
the
now
story.
we're in like a you
All
guys
right,
are more
Peter, what you
biased, is what I'm saying.
Oh, you know,
I
it's-
love
it's, It's so hard because, as I said, 213 is one of my favorite issues of any comic ever.
Yeah.
And I also 214, not only because, as for all the reasons you said, Dazzler, Barry Windsor Smith, the way we see her using her powers, Wolverine wearing the Malice locket, which we didn't even get to talk about.
Hot.
So fetch. But there's also like an unsatisfying element to it where even after you read all of it, it feels like there's so much happening off camera that like you never quite got. But also, I feel like this is the end of me like loving X-Men. I'm known for not really liking Fall of the Mutants and Outback era that much. I prefer X Factor and New Mutants in that time instead of Uncanny. So I think I'm somewhere, I'm like a 6 or a 7 on this as a whole, even though it has my favorite all-time issue in it.
6 or a 7.
Thank God for Peter.
Yes.
I see. Peter, 6 or a 7.
I'm a hardcore bell curve rater. If you look at my ratings of the last 20,000 comics I've read, they're distributed on a perfect bell curve. I do not get a lot of 5s or 10s or what, yeah.
So are you leaning more 7 or 6 for this?
I think I'm leaning more 6.
That's all I needed.
Fuck up.
It is my birthday. You know, I don't need that
We're an hour and 20
negativity in my
into the show.
life.
I will say an F-bomb if I want to say F-bomb.
You know what it is? I think it's like we talked about, and especially like getting into it with Amanda earlier, like if you know the resonance of everything that's happening with these characters, it's amazing. But if you just like pick it up from the start, you're like, Nightcrawler can't teleport. Like what is happening here? It's just like doesn't really excerpt as well as it does as part of a really long read. Yeah.
Why is Mystique part of the Freedom Fighters? What is that? Yes. That's a lot of questions.
Why does Apocalypse just come in and just bop one
Yes,
person on the head?
Because that's what they did back then. Oh my god. All right, Peter. Peter, I love and respect you. Oddfell, go ahead. Bring it home. Bring it home, baby.
Ooh, okay. I feel like I'm gonna have sacrilege now. I feel like I didn't miss a whole lot by just reading New Mutants and X Factor. As an event, I feel like just knowing that the Marauders came in and killed the Morlocks was kind of enough to get me through those other stories. There are really good moments. I really like the moment with Colossus. I really like the outcome of their powers. But overall, I feel like this event was drug out over way more issues than it needed to be. It's good. It's iconic. It's a thing that happens. But I would say overall in the scope of X-Men as a whole, 7.
Oh, okay, I can live with that. I can live with the 7.
Oh, my 6 was objectionable.
Dude,
I primed the pump on that one.
Right through the heart. I brought you here for a reason, Peter, to balance this nonsense.
My friend Peter.
It's iconic, but not flawlessly executed. It's clunky, but it's the first crossover. It's
I understand. You, Peter, I don't understand. Go ahead, Amanda.
I'll
what do you
always
got?
be here to betray you, Omar. Don't worry.
I know.
Especially on your birthday.
Oh, man. All right, Amanda, what do you got?
Okay, so coming in this as a new reader, I also have to look at it from how easy is it for a new reader to be just kind of ensconced in the world. And it is difficult because without Peter just eloquently explaining a lot of the context around it, when you just read it for what it is, which is what I did originally, it seems very anticlimactic. It seems kind of all over the place, very disjointed. There were moments I really loved. There were elements of it that did get me emotional, but it wasn't the strongest that I thought it could be. And yes, it might be the first crossover but lots of people have first novels that are amazing. A lot of people have first everything that it can be really good. So for me, I would probably have to give it a 5.5 out of 10. It was okay.
Oh, it was okay. I respect that.
Ask James for that. Wait,
Maddie, I gave Poison Ivy a 10 out of 10. Not to make you feel guilty.
Because it is a 10 out of 10.
Was it though?
Narratively, the prose, it's incredible. It's very well done.
Can we put that on the back of the next omnibus? A 5.5 out of 10 and a 7. I don't know what the hell is going on in this book. All right, Maddie, what do you got?
First of all, I like many of these, I appreciate having read this because I feel like it gives me better context for, Marvel events and X-Men overall. Same with, Dark Phoenix Saga. Same with some of the other events. I feel like there is required reading, right? That being said, and again, I have truly enjoyed talking about all this with everyone. And I feel like there's a lot in here that I really enjoyed discussing, especially the different ways characters interact with one another and learning about how some of this is the origin for other characters they're acting. That being said, I do feel like this wasn't very well balanced. And unfortunately, and this is I will say this is how I am as a newer reader with things that unfortunately because of the time there will be types of reading that don't work well for me. Okay. Because there's sometimes where it's he doesn't even see that he's being snuck up on. And I'm yeah, it's obvious. I can tell by looking at the picture that that's not the case. And that's just up the time. I try not to hold it against it, but it is hard for me to read that to be yeah, I know. We teleported to this other place. Yeah, I know. I'm aware.
You didn't have the internet back then, Maddie.
I know, and I know that
you can't Google Nightcrawler's powers.
I'm giving the context, Omar.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Because also they do the extra descriptions because they're okay, maybe someone will pick up just this issue by itself, right? Because it's more commonplace at the time to be hey, we need to re-describe what Wolverine's deal is because maybe someone's just going to pick this up and get into X-Men because it hasn't been rebooted ever.
That's it.
And I have enjoyed it more than Dark Phoenix Saga. However, I am leaning towards a 5.
A 5. A 5. A 5. 5.
I would give this a 3 out of 5 on Goodreads. That's where I'm probably going to put it. I didn't rate that
3
yet.
out of 5 is.
I didn't want anybody to be spoiled before the show. It doesn't mean I didn't enjoy it. It doesn't mean I don't want to read more. It just means as a collected thing of stories, I felt like it wasn't exactly coherent. But I enjoyed it. I just think.
What do we give Dark Phoenix Saga, James? I just want to see.
Yeah, I gave it a 4 to be nice.
What did I give it?
I think we did the same. I don't remember.
Okay.
Again, that's something.
No.
Revisit,
Okay, so we have a 5, a 7, 5.5, a 6.
I have been stressed about this all day.
Right. No. Okay. So honestly, and this is just me coming from the bottom of my heart, what I've learned so far is that I need a new goddamn panel. So if anybody needs...
It is my show.
What are you doing back? Stop bringing people back.
I have control of this. I have control of the StreamYard.
Does anybody want to join on Reader New Reader?
It's my show.
Okay.
Woo!
Okay.
Dang.
I love you very much.
I do have a question for you guys though.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I don't know if you guys have seen the 90s X-Men cartoon?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
They cover this, I believe, before Dark Phoenix Saga, yes? I think.
Yeah, they do, because Dark Phoenix Saga was like season 5, I think.
So where do we think X-Men 97 is gonna pick up? Because post Dark Phoenix Saga, this is what I would have had my money on.
Oh,
it will be something with like Magneto. Oh, Magneto is wearing his 200th.
Yeah, they're
like,
kind of
issue.
doing like the early 200s, and then I think aren't they going to do Inferno?
They're gonna do Inferno, but I don't know if they're gonna jump right into it. I'm like,
Oh, but Maddie is wearing pants in Inferno.
Yeah, I know.
Is it really Inferno if Maddie's wearing pants? Not our
Is
Maddie.
it really Inferno if Havoc doesn't have his,
game.
chest
Yeah,
out?
if Havoc isn't like wearing Speedos and like
Yeah, it's his
his
whole
nips
era.
are showing. No, it's not Inferno. Thank you everybody for saying happy birthday. Let me know what your score would have been. And then,
Something about giving scores and kind of the whole reaction is people I don't know. To me, a 3 out of 5, a 6 out of 10, that means good, better than average, higher than the middle, right? And I think that there's such a inflation of, and I'm not pointing this at Omar, I know you legitimately like this story, but people read this comic book that's like pleasant, and they're like 4 out of 5, 8 out of 10, and you see it reflected in like all these comic book roundup and League of Comic Book.
Yeah, I see what you mean.
And it's kind of like it makes it hard to pick a book that's going to really land for you if everybody gives everything an 8 out of 10 or a 9 out of 10 or a 10 out of 10,
100%.
right? Like a 5, even a 5 out of 10, it doesn't mean like this was garbage and it stunk. It just means like it's kind of in the middle for me, And so like, is this one? If I thought of my top like 3 or 4 X-Men stories of all time that just like make me cry and they're so amazing, is this whole book in it? No. Is 213? Yes, but I think if we all gave a score for 213, based on everybody's reaction. Just to the fashion.
3 out of 10.
I feel like 213, we would have all given it like 8 or a 9 or a 10, right?
I will say, as a Titans fan, there are some Titans books that are also a 5 out of 10. But there's bits of those that I love so much. They're not good.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
There's some that resonate with you and others that don't. And I get it. It is hard going back and like rating a story that wasn't really a crossover.
Well, and it's also hard, at least for me. I feel like I rated it higher than I enjoyed it simply because I know what the ripple effect of this is for later X-Men stories, and it's hard to separate its impact versus the actual story itself.
Yeah.
Especially with events like this.
Thank you for the super chat, Philip. No joke, Poison Ivy is really good, and I totally had no idea about Poison Ivy. Me neither, until Bar and that show. So thank you for that.
And I do want to read more because I get to the point now that like, when I think about the Dark Phoenix Saga, I think about this. I think some of those events that are so big in like comics history, I lack a lot of the context for in the build-up. And so I feel like maybe this year, the next year's the year to like rectify that.
Yeah.
It's just scheduling that into my reading list.
Other reads.
Right.
Yeah.
Not good enough to be in your personal library. Can't go far out.
William,
you too,
Annihilation.
You too, William, 7 out of 10. Would have been higher if the art had been better. Alan Davis accepted. Ouch. It's okay. It's okay. 9 out of 10. There we go.
A nice gift for your birthday on Saturday.
8.5, 7.5. 10 peak moments over the ride. The drag. 8.5, 9 out of 10. 8, 9. Okay, so we're seeing some high scores here. I haven't read it. I give it a 1 out of 10.
All right.
Really?
But great profile pic.
9 out of 10. Go back to play Final Fantasy.
We're done.
I'm happy Peter is in New Zealand. If he lived in Kentucky, I think his life would be on the line, right?
I wish he lived here, Peter, so we can bring you along to see too.
How many times have I said that? Then I'm like, oh, wait, I'm in Kentucky. You don't need to be in Kentucky, Peter. I need to be in New Zealand, which Peter is one of the people I'm coming to visit when I go to New Zealand. And he's going to take me to the Hobbit holes.
That's going to be so fun.
We'll take lots of pictures.
Please
We're gonna have to do a near mint condition live from like some iconic.
Oh my god! Can we do it from your house? Can we do it from the Hobbit hole?
That's the icon.
Yeah, like the Hobbit hole, or like well, because they shot it everywhere around here. You can get like a little guidebook that's basically like go down this gravel road, and that's like the waterfall from Rivendell because they just scouted locations everywhere. Yeah.
Dude, you have no idea how excited I'm going.
That's my 40th birthday trip. We've been saving up, so
Amanda's like 6 years older than I am, and that's where we're going for her 40th.
Yeah, work is starting to send me to will be sending me different site visits in the summers from now on. So I'm hoping that I get to go on one of the trips that'll be there. Not revealing what I do for work, but just revealing that site visits are a part of it internationally.
I'm like, at what point can I call it a business trip and justify it? Is where I'm at.
There's some conventions that
they have premieres. They have premieres there. Oddfell, you can fly down there.
I have Xena armor, and that's where they filmed it. At what point?
Do it. Just contact a convention. We'll contact them for you. We'll go too.
We'll squat up. We'll all go. We'll have a vacation. We'll drive Peter insane, and then we'll leave.
I will say, if I pitch us as a panel to a convention here and we get in, that you could all write it off.
Are you on your knees, Elliot? Yeah, we could totally write that off.
Yeah.
And that's exactly how taxes work in America. Well, this was a lot of fun.
I had a good time.
I did. I had a fun time.
We need to talk about Fantastic Four and X-Men. We need to talk about the Avengers and the X-Men, which are all.
I always love talking about
this. But honestly, one of the things I would love to talk about are those issues of X Factor after this. Maybe another time.
I think they would have given you all some more closure. Like the Kitty plot gets more closure. There's all this Muir Island stuff that we never got to do. So I would say this book, I have the dust jacket off just because I was reading it. But this book,
this one here,
mapped very, very well. It's mapped extraordinarily well. For those of you who don't have it, it's in perfect order. It makes perfect sense the way to read it. It's a really good collected edition.
Well, I'd love to have you all back. I mean, I'd be totally fine with doing an X Factor episode. Next month, month after. I don't know. Listen, I've scheduled this month. I haven't scheduled next month. So anytime anyone wants to do anything, I'd feel the same for you as well. If you want to read anything, just holler.
You know I'm ready for X-Men. But
I adore X Factor. I'm there. I love it so much.
But also, part of old reader, new readers to introduce me to new things, which I really appreciate. So if you've read something new, you just let me know, and I'm there for that if I can make it. If I'm not busy reading 85,000 pages of other omnis.
Right.
Yes, this is
Peacemaker tries hard, or Superman versus Meshy.
Okay, I'll take Peacemaker. I'll take Peacemaker over.
I want to talk about Superman manga so bad every day.
You can get other folks in for that.
It's so good. You'd love it. You've been to Japan twice now. Come on.
I don't even love Meshy that much.
Yeah, you do.
There was something else I was going to say. Thank you all for being here. It really means a lot to me. This wasn't the score that I was kind of expecting the score on. I'll be honest with you all. I was expecting this. It's okay. I'm not going to get, people to love the same things I do. Just like I don't love the same thing other people do. Like Peter likes a lot of shit stories that I don't like.
Wow.
And Oddfell, don't even get me on her Bendis kick. X-Men.
That was my introduction.
God.
I'm fine.
Ban Oddfell just for that, please?
I love Ileana. It's peak Ileana.
Stop it.
Have you played Midnight Suns yet?
I haven't. I've heard it's card-based combat, so I've been afraid.
Okay.
But, I love the drink. I love Yana. I need to play it.
I know it is, but listen, she's so good.
Also, I heard Nico Robin's in it. Or not Nico Robin. What's her name? Nico Robin's.
Monroe.
I was like, girl,
Yeah.
listen, I wish Nico Robin was
Wait a
in it.
minute.
I was like, that's One
You
Piece.
just crossed screens. Oddfell.
Listen, if you want to talk One Piece,
I told her
I
she
still
should
haven't watched it. My
cosplay as
friends all
Nami. I've been
cosplay
telling
it.
her that for years.
you would be a perfect. I mean, even your hair
Oh,
right now
yeah.
is like, what, Nami?
But no, seriously, thank you. You all make this so much more fun than just being here by myself talking about these books. Yeah, I have. But I also have to insult them, right? That's why I said Peter likes crap stories and
Oh yeah, no, Omar and I are at war.
X-Men.
Yeah.
Just awful.
To be fair, Amanda and I really let you have it last week with Bart because I feel like we earned it.
Yeah.
So we've been very nice.
Yeah, that was nice. That was a good conversation.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes we have good conversations, and sometimes I learn a lot of things.
Yeah.
From you all, just like you learn a lot of things from me. Maybe.
Maybe.
This is the longest old reader, new reader, by the way. Thank you for that, Jane. Officially, the longest old reader, new reader.
This has been great. Thank you.
I'll
be back next week with Godzilla, which needs to go. It's a very different.
Oh, that's a
Five.
good book. You're doing the
Very
half century war?
What?
Half century war Godzilla?
I don't know. I said I watched Godzilla and it was good, and chat said to read the deluxe edition of Godzilla by James Takeo.
Oh,
and so that's
good.
next week, and then the week after, Peter's coming back.
Woo!
What are you guys gonna do?
I don't know yet.
Still negotiating.
I want to come in for one of those streams and destroy one of Peter's favorite stories.
I gave a very eclectic list of 10 possible favorites.
It was
of
lovely.
course you did. Of course you did. Of course you did.
And listen, Oddful, anytime if you want to come back, just let me know.
Yeah, just hit me up anytime.
Okay.
I'd be down.
And there's a big group
This
here.
is your show, Maddie. Yeah.
Everyone, thank you so much for being here. Especially our guests. This has been really fun. This has made my day, and I really appreciate it. And I hope this made Omar's for his birthday. I'll see if we can FaceTime either of you this weekend when Omar is drunk off his ass on Saturday.
Yes,
in case you want any videos. Chat, it's been lovely. And I appreciate all of you. And it's been a great time. And I had a really good time talking about it. I'm going to read some more X-Men. So,
yeah.
See,
good.
You won, Omar. So, see, it's still good.
In the end, I always win.
Comment down below if you're watching this later. Tell us what you thought about it. I hope you like this video. Subscribe for more content. Join the Patreon to vote for the Wolverine Group Pick of the Month.
Thank you for that. Oddfell, where can people find you when you're not hanging out with us?
Yeah, so I'm over on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook under Oddfell. I do primarily cosplay content, and then over on YouTube, I do convention and event vlogs, as well as toy and statue unboxings. All should be under the same username. You can use the normal O to type it in.
What's your next con?
I think technically C2E2 is my next con. So that'll be exciting. It'll be a good time.
Awesome. What about you, Peter? All the way back from New Zealand, you are like in the future, dude.
I am in the future from all of you already. And in the future, I maintain a blog called crushingcrisis.com, which actually is very obsessed with the current and past of collecting Marvel, collecting DC, collecting indie comics. So every week I go over the whole Marvel new release schedule and I review all of the books, collected editions, and trade paperbacks and single issues, much like Omar does. But I also link them to the complete reading orders for each of those characters to explain where they fit in the collections. So drop by sometimes. You want to read some comic book thoughts.
I can't stress
And Omar and
enough.
Amanda, what are you reading or what are you watching tomorrow?
Aliens.
Yes.
The director's cut.
So excited.
Amanda's never seen it. It's one of my favorite movies.
Oh, so great.
Yeah, it's not.
Game over, man. Game over.
I'm very excited to hopefully not disappoint Omar as much tomorrow.
She's gonna give it a 5 out of 10. I'm gonna be like,
Well,
what?
I like Sigourney
Bill
Weaver.
Paxton alone is a 10 out of 10 in that movie. Oh my
And
god.
Bill Paxton. So yes, we will be doing that 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time live tomorrow. Omar's pick for the horror movies that you guys picked based off of Omar's.
Yeah, I gave them 5 picks and they went with that. For some reason, they didn't choose The Exorcist, which is a real true horror movie.
Now that would have been really hard for me to get through. I had to watch that.
You'll be fine with Aliens.
Forget about it.
It's more of an adventure than horror.
The Exorcist or Aliens?
Aliens. Oh god, The Exorcist is a real horror
I'm not
movie.
too scared about Aliens. Yeah,
Nah, there's a couple of jump scares, but you'll be fine. And the director's cut is the only way to watch that movie.
There we go.
And I'm here every day, including tomorrow, and
Yeah.
then the day after tomorrow. And my next live show is on Saturday. Besides Amanda's show on Wednesday, I have a Saturday stream. And then Torun Grumbeck is joining me on Sunday for my birthday chat.
Woo!
Yeah.
Love Turun. Love
Good.
that they're now a friend of the channel.
Oh, I love that woman. Yeah. So she's joining me for 2:00, I think, 2:30 on Sunday.
Nice.
So
All right,
yeah,
well, we
that's
have a great night. I'm going to keep you to more because we've done a long show, but it's been wonderful. And we'll see you all next time.
Yep.
Bye.
bye, everybody.